Chapter 9:10. However, these 300 over-magical beasts, after hearing the sacred beast's warning howl, didn't have any intention to leave. They looked around, trying to find the source of the sound. On seeing the snow-white fur and the huge nine-tailed fox, all of them lowered their heads as they gave out a submissive low moan. Submissive was submissive, but unfortunately, these magical beasts stood on the same spot, not moving at all, as they surrounded the entire leveled King Ling's tomb. There were several middle-leveled magical beasts whose plump bodies were trembling under Little Nine's intimidation, but still refused to leave. Yiqing Luo was even more certain of her guess at this moment. If it wasn't for the fact that there was someone controlling these magical beasts would have dispersed long ago. Yiqing Luo made Little Nine stop howling as she squinted her eyes and leapt onto Little Nine's back. Can you sense that there's something controlling the magical beasts? Little Nine sensed everything around it as it shook its head. Yiqing Luo propped her chin as she went into deep thoughts. If there really was someone controlling the magical beasts, he would definitely need a medium to control the magical beasts. As a sacred beast, if there really was that medium, Little Nine should be able to sense it. Could it be because Little Nine was a sacred beast, and the person who controlled the magical beasts didn't have the ability to control the sacred beasts? Looking at the 300 over magical beasts, there were 10 over low-leveled mirage beasts mixed in. Yiqing Luo's vision shifted onto Shiju, who was still lying on the ground, as its eyes were wide open as it gazed at her without blinking. She pursed her lips as she waved her hand, keeping Shiju back into the pet space. Shiju was too weak now, so she couldn't let Shiju continue to move. Roar, roar, roar. Shiju and Yiqing Luo had signed a contract, so naturally it could sense its master's emotions. After entering the pet space, Shiju gave out a low moan. It meant that it sensed that there were people around. Indeed so. Yiqing Luo didn't hesitate any further as she leapt upwards. Her petite body was like a bolt of lightning as she charged towards the direction of the beast's tide. After various powerhouses saw Yiqing Luo's actions, they were unable to ascertain that this beast tide was gathered by Yiqing Luo to escape. Therefore, they also rushed forward like a swarm of bees. The magical bees saw humans launching an attack, and their bestial instincts were instantly triggered as they raised their heads and howled a few times as they swiftly and violently tore those humans apart. These magical beasts were all coarse-skinned magical beasts. An ordinary person's weapon would not be able to harm a demonic beast at all. The various forces were blocked by the magical beasts and naturally assumed that it was the nine-tailed fox who had summoned the surrounding magical beasts to help Yiqing Luo out of the predicament. Didn't the nine-tailed fox converse with those magical beasts just now? It seemed that the Overlord was very protective of this woman. The various powers brandished their weapons, killing the demonic beasts before them. The battle that had just stopped was on the verge of breaking out again. Yiqing Luo had no time to bother about how those powerhouses' cultivators were guessing. She wanted to dig out the person controlling these magical beasts. If he didn't remember wrongly, this wasn't the first time he had met this person. Yiqing Luo was as swift as lightning as she followed the response given by Shiju, and in a few steps, she had already passed through the layers and layers of magical beasts. Sure enough, a slender figure was faintly discernible within the group of magical beasts. The black cloak covered his entire body. However, it was not difficult to see that while the figure was slender, it was also petite and was clearly a woman. At this moment, that woman's fingers were holding an emerald jade flute as she placed it by her red lips and kept on blowing. Her fingertips bounced above the jade flute, as agile as an elegant dance. But Yiqing Luo didn't hear any sound coming from that jade flute. Chapter 9:11. It really was her. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes turned cold as her figure scuttled and landed in front of the woman. This person was none other than a stranger. It was the high-level mirage beast, Childine, that they had met in the magical beast forest last month. When the world group was fighting, that batch of magical beasts had appeared. At that moment, Yi Qing Luo vaguely saw a slender female figure. It was the person in front of him. This person controlled the magical beast to follow her time and time again, creating trouble for her. What was his motive? Judging from his attire, he seemed to be a member of the dark forces. But every time she made a move, it seemed that the timing was not the same as that of the dark forces. Who are you? Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. Her voice was clear and melodious, but cold as ice. The woman did not seem to notice her existence and continued to play the flute. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased even tighter as she shot a glance at the magical beast which was still in battle and directly made her move. The glower flame fan stirred up a whirlwind as it flew towards the woman's face. The woman flipped her jade flute and quickly retreated a few steps. The jade flute was placed by his mouth again. A clear and tyrannical voice rang out, and a violent gust of wind rose from the horizon. A giant bird beast grabbed the retreating woman with its sharp claws and flew away. You want to use the bird beast to escape from here? Since she had already appeared, Yi Qing Luo had no intention to give this woman a chance to leave. Yi Qing Luo's 5 fingers moved, and a strong, profound qi burst out of her body. A powerful red mystic light burst out of the feather fan. The mystic light turned into a seam and directly severed the 2 wings of the giant beast. Yi Qing Luo stomped her feet and leapt upwards. The height at which she jumped was exactly the height at which the bird beast fell. The bird beast's wings were cut off, and it let out a mournful cry. The claws that were grabbing onto the woman immediately loosened. The woman was a little flustered, and just as she was about to play the jade flute again, her arm was grabbed by a slender little hand. She looked back and met with a pair of clear and charming eyes. Those eyes were flowing with a seductive light. The black cloak slid off his head. 4 pairs of eyes met, and Yi Qing Luo's eyes, which were filled with a sneer, was immediately filled with a sliver of astonishment. It was her. The person controlling the magical beast was actually her. Yi Qingling. How could it be Yi Qingling? Ever since Yi Qingling's use of Dark Forces items was exposed in public, her profound jade heart was destroyed and her meridians were severed. She was chased out of the Yi residence. It had been so long. Yi Qing Luo had almost forgotten about the existence of Yi Qingling. She didn't expect Yi Qingling to use such a method to appear in front of her again. He was clearly a cripple without the ability to move. Now, he had actually become a beast tamer who could control magical beasts. And it was precisely this trace of astonishment that gave Yi Qingling the opportunity to counterattack. Yi Qingling broke free from Yi Qing Luo's restraint and quickly put the jade flute to her mouth. A bird beast swiftly swooped down and caught her firmly. Why are you here? Yi Qing Luo knitted her brows as she stared at her coldly. Yi Qingling's 5 fingers clasped the jade flute as a trace of ridicule surfaced on her elegant face. Of course, it's for revenge. Her beautiful eyes gradually became sinister and filled with hatred. I want to take revenge on you and the Yi clan. I will take revenge on all those who have hurt me. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows knitted even tighter. You and the dark forces have made a deal. It wasn't a question, but an affirmative sentence. Although Yi Qingling didn't seem to notice the entanglement of the profound yin qi, but to be able to turn a cripple who had difficulty in moving into a beast tamer, other than the dark forces' forbidden technique, there was no other way. But what kind of existence was Yi Qingling in the dark forces? Chapter 9:12. Yi Qingling remained silent. Silence was considered as acquiescence. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes dangerously. Was it Yi Qing Qian who sent you to the dark forces? Yi Qing Qian was able to freely manipulate the profound yin qi, which showed that her status in the dark forces should be equivalent to that of a guardian or an elder. Yi Qingling joining the dark forces was probably because of Yi Qing Qian. She didn't look like she was eroded by the profound yin qi. But Yi Qing Luo was certain. The profound yin qi in Yi Qingling's body was more than enough. Otherwise, Yi Qingling's meridians would not be able to recover. This beast-taming ability that came out of nowhere should be the masterpiece of the dark forces. As long as I can take revenge, so what if I have to make a deal with the devil? Yi Qingling giggled, her eyes filled with hatred. Her fingers clasped the jade flute and placed it by her lips as she smiled softly. Yi Qingluo, no matter how powerful you are, facing thousands of magical beasts and those cultivators who are eyeing you covetously, you can't escape from this place. A silent airflow overflowed from Yi Qingling's fingertips. That airflow lingered around Yi Qingling's body, circling round after round. The bird beast that Yi Qingling was riding on quickly flew backward. Soon after, birds and beasts that blotted out the sky and covered the earth came whistling from all directions. These birds, Yi Qingluo's eyes suddenly surged with a strong, murderous intent. These were the birds that slaughtered the marketplace. About 100 of them, densely packed, rushed towards her. The one who slaughtered the people in the marketplace is also you. Yi Qingluo's voice also revealed a strong anger. That day, she followed the description of the tea house owner and saw the black-cloaked man. It was not Yi Qingling at all, because Yi Qingluo could tell. Yi Qingling only had a beast-taming ability. Yi Qingling did not have profound qi or profounding qi. It was just an ordinary human body. That day, the black-cloaked man had escaped from her and Dmo Xian's pursuit. Yi Qingling definitely could not do it. Yi Qingling laughed softly, her fingers dancing on the jade flute, manipulating the bird beast to tear Yi Qingluo mercilessly. It's me, but seventh younger sister isn't as sharp as I thought. She smiled until her eyes squinted. But I used a protector to attract your attention, and you fell for it easily. What? When did seventh sister become so kind? You even want to take revenge for those people in the market? The birds and beasts howled, covering the sky and covering the earth as they surrounded Yi Qingluo, enveloping her. In an instant, Yi Qingluo's figure was already covered by the birds and beasts. Yi Qingling's eyes were filled with raging hatred. The speed at which she blew the jade flute also increased, her fingertips constantly adjusting the notes. While playing the jade flute, her cold voice clearly came over. Seventh younger sister, you destroyed my profound heart jade and broke my meridians. I'll tear your body and bones to pieces and scatter your soul. The clear cries of birds and beasts pierced through the sky. One by one, they continued to surge towards Yi Qingluo's direction. Qingluo, Vice Commander. When the World Mercenary Group members below saw this, they cried out in fright. However, they were obstructed by other magical beasts and profound practitioners from other powers, so they were unable to provide assistance at all. Tong Ziqing's gaze subconsciously looked towards the man who stood alone in the midst of the chaotic battle, like a banished immortal. His hands were still behind his back. His obsidian-like deep eyes stared unblinkingly at the horizon. The expression on his face was calm, without any ripples. Tong Ziqing immediately felt relieved and transmitted her voice through the mercenary group badge. Believe in Vice Commander. Nothing will happen to her. What we need to do is to get rid of the person in front of us, to reduce Vice Commander's burden. Yes. The 20 or so mercenaries replied in a sonorous voice. Yes, they must believe in Vice Commander. Chapter 9:13. If something happened to Yi Qingluo, Dmo Xian would be more worried than anyone else. Since Dmo Xian wasn't worried, it meant that Yi Qingluo was still fine. A beast tamer couldn't do anything to Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingling's eyes were icy cold as she stared complacently at the figure that was swallowed by the birds. The flames of hatred and anger were still burning wantonly in her eyes. She blew the jade flute, controlling the bird beasts to burn Yi Qingluo, tearing her apart and finally swallowing Yi Qingluo's soul. Her mood was agitated and restless. Her chest felt stuffy and blood spilled out from the corner of her mouth. She was also at a loss. She blew the jade flute directly as her eyes were filled with a crazy and sinister hatred. She wanted to see Yi Qingluo die with her own eyes. She wanted to let Yi Qing Luo's soul never be reincarnated. Bang! A loud explosion that shook the heavens resounded, and a wave of profound energy that was like sand being washed away by a great wave instantly surged out. The birds' shrill cries were piercing to the ears. In a flash, countless bird corpses were blown away. Fresh blood splashed everywhere along with the wind. The sticky liquid, with a fishy smell, splashed on Yi Qingling's face. Her beautiful eyes abruptly widened as she looked in disbelief at the originally densely packed 100 overbird beasts which had engulfed Yi Qing Luo as they started to disperse. The blood of the birds was like a rain of blood, watering the ground. After the densely packed birds dispersed, a slender figure could be seen, faintly discernible. That simple black outfit, although it was already damaged, but when worn on Yi Qing Luo, it had a unique charm. The flame-like cherry blossom embroidery on her arm was like a flame swaying with the wind. The devastatingly beautiful face seemed to be plated with a layer of frost. The curved pink lips gently hooked into a cold arc. The long and narrow eyes were sparkling, as if it carried thousands of beauties. Her entire body was surrounded by a powerful and shocking profound energy. The red profound light was like a blossoming flower, incomparably beautiful. Smashed into pieces, Yi Qing Luo snorted lightly. Her tone was cold as she looked at Yi Qingling faintly. Soul scatter. You. How could you? No, impossible. No one could escape the siege of birds and beasts. Hundreds of bird beasts swallowed Yi Qing Luo in midair. How could Yi Qing Luo be fine? And instead her bird beast army was annihilated in one move? How strong was the current Yi Qing Luo? Yi Qingling's eyes were filled with fear as she subconsciously manipulated the bird beast beneath her to quickly leave Yi Qing Luo's direction. Third sister, didn't you want to shatter my body and scatter my soul? Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Yi Qing Luo's lips twitched in disdain. Suddenly, the feather fan opened up and a strong qi swept out, directly blocking Yi Qingling's path. Following that, Yi Qing Luo's figure flashed and got close to Yi Qingling like a demon from hell. The smile on the corner of her mouth revealed a bone-chilling coldness. Relying on the dark forces, it's nothing more than this. Third sister. The last form of address. Yi Qing Luo emphasized each and every word. Yi Qingling was so shocked that her delicate body trembled and stiffened. She wanted to manipulate the bird beast beneath her, but a cold thing had already stuck to her neck. Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qingling dared not to move again, gritted her teeth, and cried out Yi Qing Luo's name. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers pulled out the jade flute from her hand. Yi Qingling's expression turned into panic and uneasiness in an instant. The jade flute was the only thing she could rely on. Losing the jade flute was equivalent to losing the ability to protect herself. If Yi Qing Luo wanted to kill her, it would be a piece of cake. The more Yi Qingling thought, the more uneasy her heart became. At this time, the bird beast that lost control immediately became irritable. Chapter 9:14. Ah! Yi Qingling screamed in terror. Her body felt light as Yi Qing Luo grabbed her firmly and both of them landed on the ground. Yi Qing Luo, what are you trying to do? Yi Qingling panted uneasily as her pupils constricted and stared at Yi Qing Luo in fear. She had fallen into Yi Qing Luo's hands, and she had no leeway to retaliate. Sooner or later, she would be killed by Yi Qing Luo. Why not take action earlier and directly end her pain? As if she had seen through Yi Qingling's thoughts, Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up and directly interrupted her delusion. Third sister, you have repeatedly opposed me, obstructed me, and even wanted to take my life. Do you think I will let you die so easily? She smiled lightly and tilted her head. Her long and narrow eyes revealed a bit of charm. Moreover, what third sister should not have done is to massacre the marketplace. The people there were so innocent. It was just because they passed by the marketplace and had a conflict with the Iron Blood warriors. Just because of their conspiracy, a futile attempt to use the profound In Shi to engulf her. In order to massacre, There was a high possibility that the dark forces would step into the Nirvana realm. In fact, those people didn't know anything at all. Thinking of the tea house owner who was on the verge of collapse and the stall owner who painted them, Yiqing Luo's heart couldn't help but twitch a few times. A strong anger inexplicably welled up in her heart. Yiqing Luo's cold eyes faintly floated a touch of sullen. She wanted to avenge those people in the marketplace. For those innocent people, to kill this Yiqing Ling who controlled the birds and beasts and massacred the marketplace. Not only Yiqing Ling, and those people behind Yiqing Ling. Yiqing Ling's piercingly cold eyes suddenly turned scarlet. The feather fan in her hand was suffused with a terrifying, profound qi as it directly struck towards Yiqing Ling's face. Yiqing Ling was completely stunned by that pair of eyes filled with hatred. Until that profound qi struck her face, she didn't even have the time to struggle and escape. Just as the profound qi struck Yiqing Ling's face, suddenly, a more powerful profound qi directly crossed in front of her, forming a transparent protective shield. The majestic profound qi suddenly dissipated. Yiqing Ling opened her eyes in panic only to see a purple figure encircling Yiqing Luo's slender waist. That man had a face of peerless elegance. His fluttering purple robe made his handsome face look even more handsome. His long and narrow peach blossom eyes only took a casual glance, but his heart felt as if it had been hooked. However, Yiqing Ling's infatuation did not last long, because that handsome man was hugging Yiqing Luo tightly. That pair of soul-stirring eyes could only accommodate Yiqing Luo alone. Little Luo, DMO Xian's brows creased tightly as his 5 fingers clasped tightly onto the glower flame fan that she was about to raise and forcefully snatched that glower flame fan from her hands. From Yiqing Luo's side, a strong, billowing airwave was violently moving about. The intense, killing intent in her eyes refused to dissipate. Xian, don't stop me. Yiqing Luo's voice was cold as she struggled to break free from DMO Xian's embrace. She is the one who controlled the birds and beasts and massacred the marketplace. DMO Xian's eyes sunk as the strength in his arms increased. No matter what, you can't kill her now. Yiqing Luo knew that if the man refused to let go, no matter how she struggled, it would be futile. She simply raised her head and looked at DMO Xian's eyes coldly. Are you protecting her? Chapter 9:15. Since it has nothing to do with you, then get out of my way. Yiqing Luo knitted her brows tightly. She didn't like to see DMO Xian talking to her with a straight face for another woman. DMO Xian's big palm clasped the back of her head, bent down and kissed her lips. DMO Xian. Yiqing Luo flew into a rage out of humiliation. Her mouth was blocked as she roared his name. She struggled with all her might. But how could she be the man's opponent? But after a while, she had already collapsed into DMO Xian's arms. DMO Xian's eyes didn't have the slightest bit of desire when he was intimate with her. Seeing her misty eyes, he then slowly released her lips. The delicate young lady nestled in his arms. Her pink lips were red and swollen from his love, glowing, as if tempting him to bend down to pluck them. That pair of enchanting eyes were long and narrow, yet bewitching. This was the look he loved so much. But at this moment, he didn't have the urge to lust, because Yiqing Luo was not normal now. Xian. The young lady's low voice revealed a bit of weakness and languidness. Her soft and charming eyes gazed deeply at his face. DMO Xian held her slender waist. His eyes dimmed slightly as he shifted her gaze and asked tentatively, Now, do you still want to kill Yiqing Ling? His voice was deep and husky. When it was by her ear, it could easily stir a certain part of her heart. Yiqing Luo's delicate body trembled in his arms. Her gaze followed DMO Xian's direction and looked towards Yiqing Ling's direction. Instantly, the expression on her face stiffened. The memory of the short circuit just now surged into her mind. Her dazed eyes blinked and blinked again. After a long time, she regained her senses, Her eyes were filled with confusion. I just now wanted to kill her? That feeling of hatred, that feeling that filled her heart, seemed to still exist, waiting to be unleashed. But at this moment, Yi-Ching Luo could completely feel her own heart. She knew that Yi-Ching Ling was the one who massacred the market. She indeed wanted to kill her. But she absolutely didn't have that kind of strong impulse to dismember Yi-Ching Ling. This is what is going on. Just now, her heart seemed to be out of control, frantic and restless. If you still want to kill her, I'll do it. DMO Xian's voice was low as he gazed into her eyes, not wanting to miss the slightest change in her emotions. The pair of charming eyes were startled at first. Then she frowned and said, I can kill her myself. Yi-Ching Ling was aware of the change in the situation, and when they looked at her at the same time, she rolled to the side of Yi-Ching Luo's leg. Over there was the jade flute which Yi-Ching Luo had dropped onto the ground when she was kissed till she had no energy left. Yi-Ching Luo was hugged in DMO Xian's arms, and her mind was still engulfed by that restless memory earlier, so she had yet to regain her senses. Yi-Ching Ling caught the jade flute and immediately blew it. A bird beast descended from the sky and took her away. Yi-Ching Luo's brows creased into a bundle, but she didn't forcefully chase after him. Yi-Ching Luo felt a lingering fear when she recalled the inexplicable anger and murderous intent which she had earlier. It wasn't only because he was in a mess when he faced Yi-Ching Ling and wanted to kill her to vent his anger. Even earlier, when she massacred the Shangwan family's team, she also had this feeling. When she saw the fresh blood splattering and the corpses all over the ground, she actually felt strangely excited. Little Luo, from now on, don't release too strong, profound qi for the time being. DMO Xian's eyes flashed as he seemed to have a guess, but he wasn't too sure. Chapter 916. It was the World Group's mercenaries who were dealing with the sneak attacks from various forces in an orderly manner, and leading them to the side of the frenzied magical beasts, making use of the magical beast's energy to settle those powerhouses cultivators. Yi-Ching Ling originally wanted to control the magical beasts in an attempt to snatch the god relic from Yi-Ching Luo, but she had not expected it to become the World Mercenary Group's assistants. If Yi-Ching Ling knew about this, her intestines would definitely turn green with regret. Yi-Ching Luo nodded her head as she concealed the flames around her. Luckily, DMO Xian was watching over her. Otherwise, she would really sink into the massacre, unable to extricate herself. Yi-Ching Luo really didn't wish to have that kind of frenzied massacre and furious thoughts again, as though in the next second, this feeling would corrode her entire body. Old Man Song. Yi-Ching Luo called out Old Man Song's name in her mind. Old Man Song immediately replied her, No need to ask. I've already checked, and there's nothing suspicious in your limbs and bones, and there's no presence of profound yin qi. With Old Man Song's words, the suspicions in her heart were all dispelled. There was nothing strange, and she wasn't corroded by the profound yin qi. Then, her temper, why was it so baffling? After we leave King Ling's tomb, find a chance to make a trip to the Azure Dew bracelet. I'll help you take a look. Old Man Song couldn't explain the reason. She frowned and was about to continue asking when she heard DMO Xian's deep voice ringing beside her ear. What's the matter? Her conversation with Old Man Song seemed as though she was in a daze in the eyes of outsiders. Yi-Ching Luo regained her senses as her lips twitched as she shook her head. I'm wondering if something has entered my body. I'm afraid that the earlier situation will happen again. If DMO Xian didn't stop her earlier, her current, that intense murderous intent and irritable mood, was it even more uncontrollable? We'll talk about everything after we leave King Ling's tomb. DMO Xian caressed her hair as he comforted her in a warm voice. I'm here, it's all right. Yi-Ching Luo responded softly. Under the World Group's cooperation, the magical beasts were exterminated by 200 over beasts and cultivators' corpses. The number of people from various forces had also decreased from 3,000 over to 1,000 over. The entire flat ground was piled up with magical beasts' corpses and cultivators' corpses. The more than 1,000 people were already exhausted. when they saw Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian walking together. Their faces revealed a terrified and unresigned expression. The Overlord had been in the crowd from the beginning to the end. They didn't discover it because the Overlord had concealed all of his aura and formed a barrier, so other than the world group members, no one could see him. He was unwilling to give up the chance to obtain the divine artifact just because of the Overlord's appearance. Yi Qing Luo's power made many cultivators want to get their hands on the god relic. All of them thought that if the divine relic was in their hands, it would definitely shine even more brilliantly than Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo looked at those powerhouses cultivators with different expressions in their eyes, as well as those magical beasts which were charging around without a care for friend or foe, killing each other as she calmly stood still. Even if she couldn't release too powerful a profound energy right now. Even so, she couldn't generate a strong murderous aura right now. But she could still make the various forces stay away from the World Mercenary Group. So what if he let the various forces know that the divine artifact was on him? Did the dark forces think that she was afraid of this news being spread out? She would make the various forces admit that she, Yi Qing Luo, was the most suitable possessor of the divine artifact. I'll take note. Yi Qing Luo glanced sideways as her lips curled into a smile, looking at Dmo Xian who was beside her. Chapter 9:17. Dmo Xian would not stop Yi Qing Luo's decision. He believed that Yi Qing Luo would know what to do. The smile in Yi Qing Luo's eyes gradually warmed up as she tried her best to stabilize her emotions. Then, his eyes lit up like torches as they swept across the forces in front of him. You want a divine artifact? Do you have the right to do so? Yi Qing Luo's voice was cold, and her eyes were cold. The profound practitioners of the thousand forces were panting heavily. They were in a sorry state and extremely dirty. The long battle, the anger of not being able to obtain the divine artifact, and the smell of blood in this broken place for such a long time. These profounders had long since become impatient in their hearts. At this moment, hearing Yi Qing Luo's provocation, some boorish fellows couldn't control themselves as they retorted unhappily. What qualifications? You're just a little girl who hasn't even grown her hair yet. How dare you challenge us? Exactly. Little girl, do you know what kind of people we are? Any one of them would have more experience than you. You want to talk about qualifications with us? To spout such arrogant words at such a young age, you're just relying on the fact that you have a divine artifact. What kind of skill is that? These words obtained the agreement of many profounders. But because of Dmo Xian's presence, they didn't dare to reply. In his heart, he kept urging these boorish fellows who were not afraid of death to speak as fiercely as possible. The girl's charming eyes narrowed dangerously, and the corners of her mouth twitched with a faint smile. All right, then I won't use the power of the divine artifact. As soon as she finished speaking, the young girl took off the azure water ring from her finger. The gazes of the profound practitioners of the thousand citizens' force immediately stuck to her finger. But he saw Yi Qing Luo's finger tremble, and that azure dew ring disappeared from her hand. Where's the divine artifact? Damn girl, where did you hide the divine artifact? Hand over the divine artifact. Otherwise, you can forget about leaving the Ling King's tomb today. The disappearance of the divine artifact caused countless profound practitioners to panic. Their goal was only the divine artifact. If he killed Yi Qing Luo, he would not be able to get the divine relic. Instead, the Imperial Palace had set their sights on them. As long as they could get their hands on the divine artifacts, they would no longer be afraid of the Overlord. Yi Qing Luo touched the profound phoenix ring with her finger. Her eyes were filled with ridicule. It doesn't matter where the divine relic is. Now that I have taken off the divine relic, let's see what other excuses you sanctimonious people have. Then, she raised her hand and raised her voice. Brothers, let those so-called experienced and powerful seniors witness our strength. Hearing the order, Tong Ziqing and the others quickly responded, yes. There were more than 20 people, but they gave off the aura of more than 100 people. Facing the profound practitioners of more than 1,000 forces in front of them, they showed no fear. Little 9. Yi Qing Luo's eyes swept towards the direction of the nine-tailed fox. The nine-tailed fox immediately let out a bestial howl with its sharp mouth. The magical beast that had lost its master immediately submitted to the majesty of the holy beast, becoming Yi Qing Luo and the other's assistants. The two sides immediately engaged in a fierce battle. At first, the 1,000-odd people were still a little cautious, not daring to really attack. But looking at Dmo Xian's look of a bystander, absolutely not interfering in anything, gradually, there were some daring people who went forward to probe. Dmo Xian had no reaction. That daring person's probing became even more obvious. Dmo Xian still had no reaction. And in this process of probing, there were constantly cultivators who died in the hands of those young mercenaries, under the feet of those magical beasts and mirage beasts. The 1,000-odd cultivators started to get serious. Dmo Xian still had no reaction. Everyone put their hearts at ease and looked at Yi Qing Luo with undisguised greed. Chapter 9:18. The Azure Dew Ring's energy was sealed in the profound Phoenix Ring. Yi Qing Luo tried her best to control the rhythm and strength of her profound qi release. But when the feather fan in her hands killed the incoming profound cultivators, fresh blood splattered. The scarlet and glaring blood stimulated her heart, and there was still that restless feeling of wanting to move. Yi Qing Luo bore with it and didn't let that restless feeling control her body. In just a short while, the blood around her had turned into a river. Those surrounding cultivators who wanted to snatch her god relic, under the cooperation of the magical beasts and her brothers, fell one by one. Actually, these mercenaries in the world group had never killed anyone before. Some of them had never killed anyone before. They were once treated as trash. They understood the feeling of wanting to live on. Even under Long Yunzhan's leadership, they became stronger and no longer treated as trash as a disgrace. They still didn't know how to kill. When they killed the first person, their hearts were still filled with fear and uneasiness. But recalling what Yi Qing Luo had once said, in this world where the weak are prey to the strong, if you don't become other people's food, then other people will become your food. Towards those fellows who want your life, don't be soft-hearted or feel fear, because nothing is more important than staying alive. Yes, they wanted to stay alive. They wanted to stay alive and follow behind Yi Qing Luo, watching their group slowly walk towards the peak. They wanted to stay alive. They wanted to protect their brothers and companions to stay alive. Then, only by killing those people who try to take their lives away. There was nothing cruel about it, because this was the law of survival in this world. At this moment, the hearts of over 1,000 profound practitioners were filled with shock. These young men and young ladies who looked like 17 or 18 years old actually had such powerful abilities. They were obviously just mystic profound grade cultivators, and their actual combat experience wasn't that rich. But unfortunately, these 20 over young men's footwork and body movements were so agile that no one could catch up to them. Even if they managed to catch up to them, they would be blocked by the sudden appearance of the magical beasts. They couldn't hurt these youngsters at all. The most sinister thing was, when they were dealing with the magical beasts, these youngsters silently appeared behind those low-leveled cultivators and mercilessly slashed those cultivators' necks. By the time their companions reacted, these youngsters had already moved to another direction. From the beginning to the end, Dizun did not make a move. He didn't even sense the aura that was helping him in the dark. No, these youths did not need any help at all. Among all the martial arts in the world, only speed was unbeatable. This is a truth. They had only used a set of footwork and movement techniques, but they were so strange that no one could see through them. No one could see through the mysteries behind them and break them. Coupled with their tacit cooperation, the magical beasts risking their lives to take all the damage for them, and the holy beast, the nine-tailed fox, would swing its 9 tails to help them from time to time. That was enough to annihilate them all, especially that young girl who was like a bloodthirsty Azura. Everywhere she went, Flesh and blood flew in all directions, and profounders fell one by one. Her speed was several times faster than the other youths. His ruthlessness was also more direct and efficient than those youths, killing with a single slash. Don't ask why the disparity in strength was so great, why they couldn't even put up a fight. He could only say, if the strength of a team worked well together, it could really rival thousands of soldiers and horses. Chapter 919. 20 over people massacred an entire 3,000 people. If this was spread out, they would definitely become the laughingstock of Nirvana realm. How could they tolerate the reputation which they had worked so hard for their entire lifetime to be destroyed just like that? Over 1,000 powerhouses cultivators were only left with 400 over people. Until now, these cultivators were still unable to believe that everything in front of their eyes was real. They had really been massacred. Originally, they were disorderly, each listening to their own commands. Now, according to their status in the world, they had chosen the Yuchi family to become the commander, with the various powerhouses working together. Although they had reduced the number of deaths, but they still had no way to deal with these sinister and cunning youngsters. Yi-Ching Luo's feather fan in her hand struck out a sharp blade, directly killing 2 cultivators in front of her as she leapt upwards. Immediately, a bird beast flew over under Little Nine's coercion and caught Yi-Ching Luo in its arms. Yi-Ching Luo half squatted on the bird beast's back as her gaze swept past the battle situation below as she heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the training of the brothers during this period of time was effective. Their learning ability and acceptance ability had exceeded her imagination. Perhaps it was because they were once looked down upon low-leveled cultivators toward matters regarding learning. They were much more serious than ordinary people. Moreover, their unity and tacit understanding was much stronger than what she had imagined. Luckily, the brothers didn't have too many casualties, and all of them only suffered some superficial injuries. Yi-Ching Luo's gaze swept around as she saw Yuchi family's patriarch who was standing among the crowd, trying his best to command everyone to fight. As though he had sensed her gaze, or perhaps Yuchi family's patriarch had always been paying attention to her direction. Coincidentally, he raised his eyes and met her gaze. For pairs of eyes met, as Yi-Ching Luo's lips curled into a bloodthirsty, cold arc. Her devastatingly beautiful face was stained with a few drops of bloodstains. Coupled with this coquettish, cruel smile, there was a different kind of charm. Yuchi family's patriarch's heart shook fiercely as he completely froze. In the crowded and chaotic battlefield, he was pushed slightly by someone, and his whole body staggered and fell backwards. Luckily, the guards beside him reacted in time to support him. Otherwise, Yuchi family's patriarch's loss of composure would become a joke again. His heart contracted as his eyes widened in astonishment as cold sweat started to flow. After returning last month, in less than 24 hours, Yuchi Peng died silently at home. Moreover, his death was miserable, as if all of his vitality had been sucked out, leaving behind only a withered corpse. This matter caused Patriarch Yuchi to be somewhat vigilant. Yuchi Peng's death was too strange. It was so strange that the Yuchi family head had already started to suspect that Yuchi Peng had really made a deal with the dark forces. Regarding the news of Yuchi Peng's death, he had been hiding it from the outside world. He more or less believed what Yi-Ching Luo said earlier, because Duke Jing, who would often come to the Yuchi residence to hang around, ever since that day when he returned, he had never returned to the Yuchi residence. It was very likely that he had already been poisoned. But of course they couldn't eliminate the possibility that his son, or Duke Jing, whose life or death was unknown, might have been killed by Yi-Ching Luo and wanted to push the blame to the dark forces. This young lady named Yi-Ching Luo. It wasn't something he could resist at all. Just as the Yuchi patriarch was about to leave, a cold wind suddenly blew behind him. Immediately, 10 black-clothed men descended from the sky, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. The black attire of the assassin was wrapped tightly around his head, revealing only a pair of sinister and cold eyes. Chapter 920. Only, But Yiqing Luo could see the darting black airflow from these killers' eyes. These weren't killers at all. They were people from the dark forces who used the identity of Assassin Hall's killers to conceal their real identities. She had not expected that the dark forces would actually trigger 10 of them at once. Did they really think that by using the identity of Assassin Hall's killers, they could deceive everyone? These dark forces' target was a profound jade heart or god relic. Or both. Guardian, she is dead. The leader of the killers swept his gaze across the surroundings and sensed the aura of the dead from the dark forces in the air as he was filled with impatience as he muttered unhappily. He's dead, yet he still summoned us over. We thought there was some important mission when we saw the blood summon. What a disappointment. Guardian she? Yiqing Luo thought carefully for a moment and immediately reacted. Wasn't he that black-robed man who told them most of the dark forces' information? It looked like when that guardian, she was conversing with them. He had also executed the dark forces' forbidden art, blood summoned to summon these black-robed men who were disguised as killers. In this way, Guardian Ing and Elder Xiong were the first batch of dark forces to enter King Ling's tomb, whereas Shangwan Liuli was the second batch. Following behind Shangwan Liuli was Guardian Shi and that so-called Lord. Since these dark forces people were already here, naturally they wouldn't intend to return empty-handed. That leader quickly understood the remnant message that Guardian Shi used his thoughts to convey to the dark forces before he died. Knowing that the god relic and profound jade heart were in Yiqing Luo's hands, he immediately waved his hand and attacked Yiqing Luo, preparing to end the battle quickly. This batch of 10 people's ability was obviously extraordinary. They should belong to the Dark Forces Guardian Party. Without any explanation, they directly started the battle. Yiqing Luo sat on the bird beast and almost fell onto the ground. Luckily, she reacted in time as she speedily leapt up and dodged the black-robed man's attack. That bird beast only had time to cry out miserably as it turned into dregs. Yiqing Luo retreated back to her brothers as her expression turned grave. Vice Group Leader, those people. Their abilities are so strong. Mo Hanshang's handsome brows were masked with an indescribable, complicated emotion. Tong Ziqing nodded slightly as her expression congealed. Indeed, such a strong, imposing manner. These 10 people were obviously different from the profounders from the various powers. An aura that seemed to originate from hell emanated from their bodies. It was extremely dangerous, so dangerous that it was terrifying. Yiqing Luo nodded her head as her brows creased tightly. Her eyes were as deep as water. She felt it too. These 10 people from the Dark World were definitely not lower than the Guardian Elders in the Dark World. This was especially true for the leader. His aura was so strong that even Yiqing Luo was unable to see through his profound chi fluctuations. It was as if there was an invisible, mysterious ripple on his body that was released along with his every move. If you don't want to suffer, then obediently hand over the divine tool and profound heart jade. The hoarse voice of the black-robed leader resounded. Why are the assassins from your Hall of Assassins here to join in the fun? The divine weapon is ours. Who do you think you are? Some profound practitioners had long since suppressed their anger in their hearts. At this moment, he saw that the Hall of Assassins also wanted a share of the loot, and it only appeared when only 400 of their 3,000 people had died. No one could stand it. The profound practitioner had only just taken a single step forward. Chapter 921. Blood and brain matter splattered, and under the sky, full of blood, it was extremely disgusting. Everyone's vision followed the direction of the palm wind. The leader retracted the hand that he had used to send out the palm wind. Vicious, too vicious. His attack was swift and merciless. It was this murderous aura which made these cultivators who were used to killing not dare to say a single word. The leader saw that the surroundings had quietened down and immediately shot his venomous gaze towards Yiqing Luo. Or, you can choose to leave with me obediently. If I'm happy with your cooperation, I can consider leaving those burdens of yours an intact corpse. These words were simply arrogant to the extreme. The various powerhouses' cultivators were all shocked. Since when did the killers from the Hall of Assassins have such guts? 20 over mercenaries' hearts were filled with anger as they pouted and wanted to reply. But it was stopped by Yi Qing Luo's hand. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased coldly as she met with that pair of sinister and eerie eyes. There wasn't any fear in her, but instead she gave a smile. Have you people from the Guardian Party always been so arrogant and condescending? Law Protector Party, these 3 words came out. Yi Qing Luo obviously saw the astonishment and vigilance in that black-robed leader's eyes. Young lady, it's indeed rare for you to have such guts at your age. The black-robed leader's eyes sunk as he gave a sly sneer. After a pause, that sneer turned gloomy and sinister. But guts should be placed on the right person. For example, me, that is seeking death. The moment his words fell, the black-robed leader had already launched his attack. Both his palms raised up as he struck out horizontally with his palm wind. Rumble. The strong airwave raised the sky full of dust and gravel. Yi Qing Luo's surroundings had sunk into a hurricane. This gush of strong energy made Yi Qing Luo slightly stunned. She could even feel that when the hurricane blew, it lifted her clothes and hit her skin with a piercing pain. The dark forces were indeed the dark forces which made people tremble with fear. Such a powerful person, who also possessed a heaven-defying forbidden skill to protect himself. If he really existed in the Nirvana realm, then this realm would never be at peace. Yi Qing Luo transmitted her voice into the mercenary group badge as she said softly, "Deal with them carefully. These people are from the dark forces. If you really can't win them, just escape first." After he finished speaking, he suddenly opened the glowing flame fan in his hand and faced the hurricane, sweeping away a wind blade. The bewitching red light was dazzling. It forcefully tore a hole in the hurricane. Yi Qing Luo didn't have any intention to stop as her figure did a somersault in midair, and the feather fan in her hands launched several ferocious attacks. The silver threads were like venomous snakes sticking out their scarlet tongues as they shot forward. That black-robed leader didn't expect Yi Qing Luo's reaction to be so fast. In such a short period of time, he dodged his attack and even retaliated. The black-robed leader's eyes were filled with admiration for Yang Kai's talent. As expected of the girl that his lordship has taken a liking to, her aptitude is indeed astonishing. The black-robed leader's head tilted slightly, and the 9 black-robed men behind him immediately swarmed up. The world mercenary group's mercenaries immediately went up to resist the 9 men's attack. When the various powerhouses saw this, they immediately wanted to butt in, but they heard several tens of magical beasts howling as their huge bodies blocked those powerhouses' cultivators. The black-robed leader's eyes rose slightly as his penetrative gaze instantly turned sharp. His palm wind flipped once again as streams of palm wind were ferocious and sharp. Yi Qing Luo was separated from a distance away, but she could still clearly feel the strong air wave pouncing onto her face. She subconsciously opened her feather fan as the red profound light turned into a protective cover. Bam! Chapter 922. Her heart suddenly trembled, and her long eyelashes fluttered in a slightly panicked manner. The strength of this person from the Dark Organization was far beyond her expectations. She could feel that this person from the Dark Organization was not using his full strength. Even without using his full strength, he was still able to possess such powerful strength. If he used his full strength, Yi Qing Luo didn't dare to think about it. If it wasn't a matter of life and death, Yi Qing Luo really wasn't willing to seek help from DMO Xian. In this way, the so-called self-growth would lose its meaning. Not bad. Then, let's see if you can still take the next palm. The leading black-robed man's tone added a bit of interest. It had been a long time since he had met such an interesting opponent. The black-robed man's eyes darkened as he struck out with both palms. The palm wind seemed to have formed a giant dragon. That huge dragon circled a few times, its profound light dazzling, and the vast energy waves were like a life-reaping talisman. The huge dragon bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it pounced towards Yi Qing Luo. The huge dragon was approaching menacingly, and Yi-Ching Luo's expression changed instantly. Her fingers moved, and she could feel a piercing pain in her palm. The move he had forcefully resisted just now had injured the bones in his right wrist. Now, it was a little strenuous for him to use even a little of his profound qi. The giant dragon was about to swallow him whole. Yi-Ching Luo had no other choice but to raise her left hand, her fingertips already wearing the azure dew ring. He suddenly opened his 5 fingers and raised his profound qi to the highest realm. Facing the giant dragon, he also slapped his palm heavily with a powerful wave of qi. Bang! There was another deafening sound of collision. 2 gusts of palm wind instantly exploded in the air, setting off rolling waves. The surrounding air seemed to have solidified. An earth-shattering power instantly surged over. The surrounding chosen ones instantly felt a tightness in their chests. Some profound practitioners with unstable, profound ranks spat out blood while clutching their chests. They all stared at the 2 people who were still facing each other in the air. This kind of powerful and boundless power was on a completely different level from when it was used against them just now. That was to say, when Yi-Ching Luo was contending against them, she totally didn't use her full strength. Even if he didn't use the power of the divine artifact, he didn't use his full strength. This 15-year-old girl, it completely shook the hearts of the profounders from the various powers. Whereas at this moment, Yi-Ching Luo wasn't as calm as she looked on the surface. She could feel it deeply. This black-robe leader's profound rank was definitely higher than hers by more than 1 profound rank. At the very least, it was a Sky Xian supremacy. Yi-Ching Luo's heart was overwhelmed with shock. The dark forces actually had a supreme expert of the sky profound realm. Then, the leader of the dark forces, that person who was addressed as Lord, could it be that he was on the same level as Dmo Xian? With his palm strike, he activated the power of the azure water ring and fused it with his own profound energy. Yi-Ching Luo felt that it was extremely strenuous. After receiving this palm strike, Yi-Ching Luo's body quickly retreated a few steps, avoiding the encroachment of the palm qi. However, the black-robed leader seemed to have seen through Yi-Ching Luo's thoughts. Just as Yi-Ching Luo moved her foot, he speedily stuck close to her. Those 5 sharp fingers, which were like an eagle's claw, clawed towards Yi-Ching Luo's heart. Yi-Ching Luo was aghast. She didn't expect her footwork to be seen through by this black-robed man. He immediately turned around, and his figure turned into an afterimage as he quickly retreated. That black-robed leader was still able to entangle her accurately. His 5 fingers mercilessly stabbed towards Yi-Ching Luo's heart once again. Yi-Ching Luo's vigilant muscles tightened as her body speedily moved towards the left side and immediately did a roll on the ground. No matter how fast her reaction was, she still couldn't resist the black-robed leader's attack. Chapter 923. Yi-Ching Luo endured the severe pain and displayed her footwork once again. She turned into an afterimage and was 10 meters away from the black-robed man. Young lady's speed is not bad. The leader revealed his white teeth and smiled coldly. Yi-Ching Luo lowered her eyes and glanced at the wound that was still oozing blood. Blood gushed out and the white bones were vaguely visible. She closed her eyes and the expression on her face was calm, without any signs of panic. The injury on her right hand had become more serious. Yi-Ching Luo took a deep breath and quickly raised her left hand. The power of the azure dew ring was injected into the glower flame fan, and a wave of strong airflow was launched in the direction of the black-robed man. Immediately after, she leaped up and quickly attacked the black-robed man with a cold glint in her eyes. The difference between a single grade was like 108,000 miles, not to mention the gap above the profound grade. Yi-Ching Luo felt it deeply at this moment. In the eyes of the sky mystic Overlord, the speed that she had always been proud of was not worth mentioning compared to the shadow escape footwork that she brought from the modern world. Was this the power of the sky mystic Overlord? Yi-Ching Luo's charming eyes shot out an intense glint of determination. A strong opponent would only ignite her fighting spirit. She clenched the glower flame fan tightly, and when she got close to the black-robed man, a few silver threads burst out from the fan and wrapped around his neck. In front of him was the airwave attack that Yi Qing Luo had set off. Behind was Yi Qing Luo's attack. The black-robed man's eyes were cold, and he sneered disdainfully. "Young lady, you are still too inexperienced." As soon as the voice fell, the figure of the black-robed man suddenly disappeared into the air. Yi Qing Luo's silver threads missed. She was shocked and released her senses vigilantly and scanned the surroundings. But she couldn't sense the slightest fluctuation at all. Suddenly, there was a slight change in the flow of air. Yi Qing Luo turned sideways, and with a flying kick, she directly kicked toward a certain direction from her side. Sure enough, the kick hit the black-robed man, but her feet were directly buckled by the black-robed man. Yi Qing Luo was shocked, only to hear a loud "kacha" sound. The sharp fingers of the black-robed man directly pinched her feet. "Oh!" With a muffled groan, Yi Qing Luo suddenly felt a piercing pain spreading throughout her limbs and bones. She was in so much pain that her face turned pale. Enduring the pain, she kicked the black-robed man's face. Perhaps he was too confident in himself. Perhaps he didn't even put Yi Qing Luo in his eyes. Perhaps he had not expected Yi Qing Luo to have the energy to retaliate. This kick, with great force, directly landed on the black-robed man's face. The black-robed man loosened his grip on Yi Qing Luo's leg and was forced to take a few steps back. After he steadied himself, his sinister eyes revealed an extremely strong killing intent. This kick did not cause any fatal damage to the black-robed man. However, he had stepped on the black-robed man's pride. "All right, good, great. I, Old Leopard, have lived most of my life. This is the first time someone has dared to touch my face." The black-robed man laughed sinisterly. The ear-piercing, furious laughter made one's heart tremble. An extremely powerful force emanated from the black-robed man's body. The surrounding air had already started to make a strong, buzzing sound. The black-robed man was enraged. The majestic force was extremely horrifying. The cultivators from various forces already had their legs weak, shocked by this horrifying force. "Old Leopard?" This man was the one that the snake guardian mentioned, one of the 4 sacred techniques, the leopard saint technique. No wonder he was so powerful. Once the leopard saint technique was completely infuriated. Chapter 924. Vice Group Leader. Those mercenaries who were still entangled with the other black-robed men were extremely worried when they saw this situation. How powerful was the other party? The extent of his power had far exceeded everyone's imagination. Even if they didn't want to believe it, they had no way to deny it. This black-robed man, he must be a sky profound grade overlord. The other powerhouse's cultivators were extremely shocked. The Assassin Hall actually sent out a sky profound grade overlord to snatch the god relic? Didn't that mean the Assassin Hall was determined to get this god relic? At this moment, DMO Xian, who was standing by the side, watching the battle, couldn't suppress the worry on his face. The faint black eyes were fixated on Yi Qing Luo without blinking, taking in her expression and her injuries into his eyes. Lil Luo was not that person's opponent. If they continued to fight, it would only worsen Lil Luo's injuries. He wanted to go up to help, but on seeing Yi Qing Luo's stubborn eyes, he had no choice but to put down his feet. This was the freedom he promised Lil Luo, and it was also Lil Luo's chance to grow. Any strong cultivator on the path to the peak would inevitably get injured and fall into a life and death situation. Lil Luo could still continue fighting, so he must suppress this worry and accompany Lil Luo. DMO Xian's slender fingers clenched into a fist. That round fingernail deeply embedded into his palm. Streaks of bright red marks were imprinted on the ground. His eyes were scarlet red as he resisted the urge to rush up and destroy Leopard Saint technique. Suddenly, DMO Xian's eyes flashed as he thought of something. His faint eyes seemed to be swirling with a whirlpool as he took a deep look at Yi Qing Luo. His purple robe fluttered and his figure silently disappeared from the battlefield. Yiqing Luo, indeed, wasn't feeling well now. Her entire body was in tearing pain. She swiftly swallowed a medicinal pill and tapped the acupoint on her shoulder to stop the blood from gushing out. Whereas the furious leopard Saint Technique, who was standing opposite her, had completely unleashed his aura. The huge airwave was like a raging hurricane. The hurricane swept her and Leopard Saint Technique into it, isolating them from the outside world. That terrifying and powerful murderous aura was daunting. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled fiercely. Leopard Saint Technique, indeed, didn't show any mercy. His palm strike was biting cold, and the intense profound light surged as it struck towards Yiqing Luo ruthlessly. He didn't give Yiqing Luo any leeway to retaliate. With a turn of his body, he struck another palm towards the direction where Yiqing Luo was moving towards. The excruciating pain in his body made Yiqing break out in cold sweat. Her expression was solemn. She took a deep breath and stabbed the glowing flame fan behind her. However, he missed. The speed of the Leopard Saint Technique was extremely fast, so fast that Yiqing Luo's naked eye couldn't catch it all. And at this moment, Leopard Saint Technique's pride had suffered setback, so he didn't intend to kill Yiqing Luo directly. Instead, he was prepared to torture Yiqing Luo viciously, making her submit in despair and pain. As long as he kept her alive and brought her back, his lord would not blame him. Yiqing Luo deeply felt the disparity between herself and a sky mystic overlord. She could not see the trajectory of the Leopard Saint Technique's attack. It was merely half a cup of tea's time, and Yiqing Luo had already been pushed back step by step. The injuries on her body were getting more and more severe. His black clothes were stained with blood, so it was impossible to tell. But everyone knew that Yiqing Luo had absolutely suffered an extremely serious injury at this moment. And every single time Yiqing Luo counterattacked, she could at most leave scratches on Leopard Saint Technique's body. This made Leopard Saint Technique give a disdainful sneer. Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth tightly, enduring the intense pain which made her feel dizzy. Chapter 925. She represented the world group's hope. It represented the beliefs of all the brothers. Once she fell, her brothers would worry about her, and she would definitely become a soul in the hands of these cruel and cold-blooded dark forces. Even if DMO Xian was there, he couldn't guarantee that he could protect every single one of his brothers. Since she had already promised, she wanted to spread the world group's name. Now, he absolutely could not fall. I like a little girl like you who can endure. Leopard Saint Law's eyes were cold, and there was a trace of madness in them. It was the expression of his prey resisting, igniting his desire to trample on his prey even more cruelly. Looking at his prey, covered in blood and struggling in pain in his hands, Lin Fan felt a chill run down his spine. That was the best feeling. The world group's mercenaries were all filled with worry as they looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction in terror. They wanted to help, but the 10 black-robed men in front of them were so hard to deal with that they couldn't split their attention at all. They had already exhausted a great deal of their stamina in the previous battle against the various forces. These 10 black-robed men were so powerful that they seemed to be able to see through their movements. There were also many people from other forces who wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to attack them. It was impossible to guard against. All the mercenaries were covered in wounds of various sizes. Their bodies were covered in blood, and it was hard to tell if it was the enemy's blood, their own blood, or the blood of their comrades. However, they were not afraid at all. They supported each other and attacked the enemy black-robed men. Sister, Kitty Lee looked at Yiqing Luo, who was covered in blood, and with a cat's acute sense of smell, she could clearly smell the familiar smell of blood. No matter how anxious she was, Kitty Lee knew that she couldn't help her sister right now. Instead, he would become a burden to his sister. A few of the nails on her cat-like hands had already been broken. Her delicate little face was also covered with sweat. Her quick-witted eyes looked towards DMO Xian's direction, hoping that he would lend a helping hand. But looking at the entire battlefield, there was no sign of DMO Xian at all. Kitty Lee panicked and grabbed Tong Ziqing with her little claws. Sister Ziqing, His Majesty is missing. Tong Ziqing's expression changed as she looked in the direction of Kitty Li. Sure enough, Dmo Xian was nowhere to be seen. Tong Ziqing knitted her brows tightly. Their only reliance was Dmo Xian. Now that Dmo Xian wasn't around, could they really hold on? For a moment, Tong Ziqing felt a sharp pain on her back. She was slashed by someone from one of the forces, and the pain made her cold and elegant face pale. Kitty Li tore that profound practitioner to shreds with a single claw and turned her head to support Tong Ziqing. Big Sister Ziqing, I'm fine. Tong Ziqing clenched her teeth and waved her hand. She endured the pain, forced herself to endure it, narrowed her cold eyes, and coldly swept the surrounding profound practitioners. Do you think you can leave here alive after killing us? Tong Ziqing's cold voice seemed to be covered in frost. She used her profound qi and spread it out. These people are all from the dark forces. That's right, it's the group of beasts that were expelled from the Nirvana realm. These people will definitely not let anyone who knows their identity get away. Tong Ziqing said word by word. There was not a trace of emotion in his words. Of course, you can choose not to believe me. In the end, we will all die together. Her words had just landed when a terrified voice was heard. Is what you said true? They are from the dark forces? The various forces cultivators looked towards the direction of the voice, and the distrustful expression on their faces changed immediately. Chapter 926. Yuchi family's patriarch, their current chief commander. These powerhouses cultivators originally didn't really believe it. These killers from the Assassin Hall were obviously targeting the World Mercenary Group. No, to put it more accurately, they were targeting Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's companions' words were definitely to make use of their strength to go against these killers. Dark forces? They had not heard of the dark forces for a long time. Hadn't they been expelled from Nirvana realm 1,000 years ago? How could they possibly appear again? Yuchi family's patriarch stepped forward from the crowd as his gaze swept past those black-robed men with a terrified expression. Dark forces. These people really are from the dark forces. Tong Ziqing gave him a cold stare, not having any good impression of Yuchi family's patriarch. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Anyway, I've already said what I should say, and I've done my best. Yuchi family's patriarch went into deep thoughts. These killers, no matter if they were from the dark forces or not, all of them had ill intentions. Ever since these people appeared, no matter which powerhouse the other party belonged to, as long as they obstructed them, they would directly tear them into pieces. Moreover, their methods were extremely cruel. Moreover, the various powerhouses were indeed unable to leave. The minute they had any thoughts of leaving, these black-robed men would directly kill those people who wanted to leave. Most importantly, these black-robed men's target was the same as the various powerhouses for the God Relic. From the current situation, these black-robed men's abilities were obviously above Yiqing Luo's. Rather than snatching the God Relic from these black-robed men whose abilities were unfathomable, they might as well snatch it from the extremely weak Yiqing Luo, who was covered in blood. Thinking in this way, Yuchi family's patriarch followed Tong Ziqing's words. This patriarch chooses to believe what this young lady said. To tell the truth, my son Yuchi Peng had died under the dark force's sinister forbidden arts. Saying this, Yuchi family's patriarch's expression turned sorrowful and grave as he raised one hand and covered his eyes, as though he was grieving for his own son. Looking at these people's skills, as well as their vicious attacks, they are absolutely from the dark forces. They want to disguise themselves as assassins from the Assassin Hall, attempting to frame the Assassin Hall. Patriarch Yuchi's voice suddenly became extremely heavy and solemn. The dark forces secretly sneaked into the Nirvana realm from the plane of Nirvana realm. If we find out about their identities, they will definitely kill them to silence them. The patriarch of the Yuchi family was one of the 4 great aristocratic families. His words were naturally more important than those young mercenaries from the World Group. Immediately, the various forces became anxious and uneasy. They all looked at the Yuchi family head, waiting for his suggestion. I, Yuchi Hongwei, head of the House of Yuchi, hereby declare my intention to cooperate with my fellow comrades. Let's put aside all our daily unhappiness and fight together for the sake of survival. Immediately, many people from other forces raised their arms in agreement. When the other forces saw this, they naturally couldn't be left alone. Patriarch Yuchi's complexion improved slightly. He was just about to ask Tong Ziqing more about the situation. However, the girl's face was cold as she turned around without looking back. She waved the weapon in her hand and continued to fight with the black-robed men. Patriarch Yuchi's expression turned stiff as he awkwardly shifted his gaze away and gathered everyone to join in the battle. After these 400 over-cultivators joined in the battle, these dark forces' black-robed men apparently couldn't keep up with them. Chapter 927. Yiqing Luo was finally able to extricate herself slightly and do some simple treatment for the injuries on her body. Mu Zifei also restrained his profound qi and followed Yiqing Luo to retreat to the battlefield. Without saying a word, he took out healing pills and tools from his space pocket and bandaged Yiqing Luo's wounds. Some injuries couldn't be bandaged by Yiqing Luo alone. Yiqing Luo didn't refuse Mu Zifei's good intentions and let him bandage her. But her gaze was fixed on the few people in front who were obviously not Leopard Saint Technique's opponents. She didn't see Mu Zifei's increasingly ashen face as he bandaged her wounds. And when he was treating the wound on Yiqing Luo's shoulder, he had just unsealed her acupuncture point when he saw a lump of blood gushing out. Yiqing Luo groaned in pain. This sound completely ignited Mu Zifei's anger. You also know pain? Yiqing Luo was startled and turned back to meet the anger in Mu Zifei's eyes. Throwing caution to the wind and tormenting your body, will you only be satisfied when you collapse? Mu Zifei's words carried a thick anger, but the movements of his hands were extremely gentle for fear of hurting her. Yiqing Luo's eyes revealed a trace of warmth. She lightly hooked her lips and smiled. I'm fine. I'm a doctor. I can see whether you're fine or not. Mu Zifei's brows were tightly knitted. If I suggest you start a rest now and don't do any strenuous actions, will you agree? Yiqing Luo silently lowered her eyes. Seeing this expression, Mu Zifei also understood that it was useless to say more. He pursed his lips and lightly sighed. Why don't you let the Overlord take action? As long as DMO Xian took action, no matter how strong the so-called dark forces were, they wouldn't have the power to resist. Why did they have to make themselves riddled with scars? Mu Zifei really didn't understand this approach. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled as her gaze swept over the injuries on her body. Her expression was very calm and didn't show the slightest bit of shock because of the injuries on her body. Her expression remained indifferent. She slowly shook her head and said with a faint smile, If everything depends on Xian, then my existence is meaningless. It's because of your existence that he will take action. How is it meaningless? Mu Zifei frowned tightly. Just because of this ridiculous reason, she refused DMO Xian's help? That's not what I meant. Yiqing Luo shut her eyes as she sighed softly. I want to become even stronger, to become your assistants, and not to make use of my relationship with Xian to achieve my goal. In this world, there are many reliable people, but in the end, we can only rely on ourselves. It wasn't that she didn't want to believe that DMO Xian would protect her at all times. It wasn't that he didn't believe that his brothers could be relied on. However, what she wanted was to become stronger herself, and not rely on others to become stronger. The Leopard Saint Technique was a rare opponent. If, under the stimulation of a Leopard Saint Technique, she could flexibly use the profound energy that she had broken through to the Earth profound realm, at least in the Western continent, she would be able to properly protect her companions. If she really sensed the danger of death, she would seek help from DMO Xian. Don't even think about it. Dizun has already left. Mu Zifei helped her wrap up the wound on her shoulder and specially added some medicinal powder to stop the bleeding and pain. Only then did he put away the treatment tools. Gone? Yiqing Luo was stunned as she subconsciously searched for DMO Xian's figure. Indeed, Within 100 meters of the entire Ling King's tomb, there wasn't a single trace of Dmo Xian. Where did he go? Because she let herself get injured and refused to open her mouth to ask for his help. So he was angry? Yiqing Luo pursed her pale lips. Actually, if it was her, if Dmo Xian forced her to watch him get injured and not intervene, she would also be angry. Chapter 928. Thinking about it from another perspective, Yiqing Luo suddenly felt that her request was too much. A miserable shriek was heard. Tong Ziqing's petite body was flung out heavily. She crashed onto the ground as she spat out a mouthful of blood. Sister Ziqing. Kitty Lee's face was extremely pale as blood trickled down from the corner of her mouth. Ziqing. Yiqing Luo wanted to stand up, but she had no energy at all. Her face was slightly pale as she looked at Mu Zifei. Mu Zifei had already packed up the treatment tools as he stood up and looked at the other end of the battle. You need to rest until the medicine takes effect. Before that, we will help you fight for time to heal. He lifted his foot and took a few steps towards the battlefield before stopping again. You should also have healing elixirs on you that are stronger than mine. At the very least, you need to rest for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Saying that, Mu Zifei had already pulled out his soft sword as he charged towards the leopard Saint Technique's direction. Kitty Lee also heard Mu Zifei's words. She took a look at Yiqing Luo, who was sitting on the ground with a pale face. She took another look at Tong Ziqing, who was lying on the ground with a mouth full of blood. Kitty Lee bit her lower lip as her lively eyes stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. Sister, Kitty will help you fight for time to rest. Saying that, she turned her head and with a leap of her legs, she charged towards the leopard Saint Technique once again. Yiqing Luo's brows twitched as she realized that Kitty Lee might be doing something incredible as she immediately got up to stop her. Kitty, come back. But her legs were weak as she sat on the ground powerlessly. Kitty Lee's figure was like a nimble cat as she kept on scuttling. That long and slender black tail had already shot out of her robe. She stood in front of the leopard Saint Technique, her eyes as pure as a cat's, full of determination. She wanted to protect her sister. Protect her sister. Even if she had to exhaust her own beast power, she must fight for time for her sister. The little girl's body suddenly shot out an extremely intense black light. A black cat's shadow appeared behind the girl. That black cat extended its sharp claws as it bared its fangs and placed it by its mouth as it stroked lightly. Indistinctly, an extremely sharp cat's cry could be heard. Meow. It was a cry that seemed to be able to penetrate one's heart, causing one's soul to tremble. The shadow of the black cat slowly spread behind Kitty Lee and finally turned into a shadow with the size of Tiger. Erect ears. His long tail kept swaying. From time to time, he would lick Cat's Claw's tongue. That shadow was vivid and lifelike. The expression on Kitty Lee's face had also abruptly faded away from her usual innocence and innocence. What replaced it was a wild and murderous expression. It was as if he had become another person. No, it should be a different soul. Kitty Lee's body and soul were no longer Kitty Lee. Instead, it was this black cat shadow. Meow. Kitty Lee squinted her extremely lazy eyes, and the corners of her mouth curled into a sexy, cold arc. Her wild eyes were fixated on Yiqing Luo. Furrowing her brows, Kitty Lee snorted impatiently. You summoned me just to protect a weak human like you? She scoffed lightly, extremely disdainful. You're indeed just a waste, Meow. After interacting with humans, you've really assimilated yourself with them, Meow. Yiqing Luo's brows creased, not liking this Kitty Lee's tone and expression. Chapter 929. Beastman Races. Forbidden Technique, which meant that this special ability was prohibited by the Beastman race. Then, Kitty Lee had used this special ability, wouldn't it be? As if he could read Yiqing Luo's thoughts, Old Man Song explained. This special ability is also known as. After using this ability, the Beastman race's hidden beast consciousness will be awakened, reaching the state of unity of mind and body. This way, they will be able to display all the power of the Beastman race. And once this ability is used up, the beast power will be exhausted and the Beastman race's body will fall into a deep sleep, approximately 3 days in the Nirvana realm. Which meant the cat beast in Kitty Lee's body had awakened. The current Kitty Lee was a cat beast in the Beastman race. You don't have to worry that this cat beast will do anything to harm Kitty Lee's body or any of you. Old Man Song continued to explain. Even if she completely inherited the cat beast power, she is still Kitty Lee and has Kitty Lee's memories. Like what Kitty Lee said, she was summoned by Kitty Lee to protect Yi Qing Luo. She would complete her mission and fall into a deep sleep in Kitty Lee's body. Yi Qing Luo shook her head slowly. I'm not worried that she will hurt me, but Kitty Lee did this. Once the cat beast power is exhausted at this juncture, it will be very easy. The Leopard Saint technique was so powerful that Yi Qing Luo couldn't guarantee that she could still defend against it and protect the sleeping Kitty Lee at the same time. So lass, become stronger and protect them. Old Man Song sighed. The current you has enough ability to pass the second level of the Purgatory Tower. Perhaps the third level also has a chance. After everything is over and you're sure that your body is fine, you can start to challenge the Purgatory Tower. Yi Qing Luo responded softly. Her pair of charming eyes were gradually dyed with the radiance of unswerving determination. Yes, she wanted to become stronger. Only by being strong, surpassing everything, could she protect the people she wanted to protect. There was no need to fear the Leopard Saint technique. There was no need to fear the so-called Lord. Kitty Lee's extremely lazy eyes swept across Yi Qing Luo, who was covered in wounds. Forget it. No matter how bad this human was, she was still the one chosen by the cat beast. As the spirit of the cat beast, she would do her best to protect the people she wanted to protect. When she turned her head to look at the Leopard Saint technique, her expression suddenly turned sharp. All the hair on his body stood on end, as if he was staring at something dangerous. That was the acute sense of a cat. Immediately after, Kitty Lee took lazy and elegant steps, approaching the Leopard Saint technique. After inheriting the cat beast's power, Kitty Lee's strength had more than doubled. The sharp cat claws grew new nails again. It was as sharp as a machete and could cut through iron like mud. However, a sky-profound supremacy. Moreover, a power that was at least at the pinnacle was not something that an ordinary cat beast could contend against. Yi Qing Luo watched with her own eyes as Kitty Lee fell down again and again under the confrontation with the Leopard Saint technique, but stood up without knowing the pain. The increasingly shrill meows of the cats shook the hearts of the humans, causing them to feel a stabbing pain. After about the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, Kitty Lee exhausted the last bit of the cat beast's strength and fell from the sky covered in wounds. Kitty! Yi Qing Luo knitted her brows tightly. A burst of energy suddenly rushed out from her feet, and the azure dew ring on her fingertips began to heat up. Yi Qing Luo's figure swiftly extended as she steadily caught Kitty Lee. The little figure nestled in her arms. Quick-witted and slightly hazy, beautiful eyes gazed deeply at Yi Qing Luo's face. After a long time, Kitty Lee's lips curled into a smile as she stretched out her hand to touch Yi Qing Luo's face. Sister, it's good that you're all right. Her voice was gentle and slow. If one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't be able to hear it. Following that hand which was covering her face slowly drooped down. Chapter 9:30. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with a biting cold intent. Her extremely pale, pink lips pursed tightly. The expression on her face was calm and indifferent. After a long while, she restrained the emotions in her eyes and placed Kitty Lee at the place where she was resting. There was an enchantment set up by Mu Zifei here. It was enough to protect Kitty Lee from being hurt by other cultivators. Leopard Saint Technique's eyes were filled with a perverted, sinister smile. His hands were full of fresh blood. That was the blood of those who came forward to die without a care for their lives. Raising his hand, he placed his finger on his lips under the black veil, as if he was licking the fresh blood on his hand. That look was like a bloodthirsty devil. Seeing Yi Qing Luo slowly walking towards him, Leopard Saint Technique's sinister eyes flashed a trace of ridicule. "Have you recovered? I love to see the scene of prey struggling at death's door." Yi Qing Luo's expression was cold as she looked at Leopard Saint Technique indifferently, turning a deaf ear to his ridicule. Earth profound, level profound energy was released from her body like a raging storm. Her whole body was surging with profound energy as she bared her fangs and brandished her claws. Hurricanes interweaved, covering the sky like a black curtain, covering thousands of brilliance in an instant. The Azure Dew Ring's divine weapon power was also released at this moment. No matter what impact it would have on herself if she released all her power. At this moment, she had to rely on releasing all her power. Even if that kind of hatred, anger, and irritation eroded her body and mind, making her feel angry and bloodthirsty. That target would only be Leopard Saint Technique. The biting cold in her eyes was like a sharp blade, scraping Leopard Saint Technique's skin. She didn't waste any words with Leopard Saint Technique. The glower flame fan in her hand had already swept up a violent hurricane, attacking Leopard Saint Technique. The attack was completely different from before. Yi Qing Luo didn't hesitate in her attack. The calm and determined light in her eyes made her mind extremely clear. The combination of the silver silk and profound energy was fierce, with an austere and deathly aura. One move after another, Leopard Saint Technique was forced to retreat step by step. And under a more sinister move, Leopard Saint Technique's chest was hit by Yi Qing Luo's silver silk. That long silver silk was as fine as hair. It went straight through Leopard Saint Technique's chest. Fresh blood dripped down along the silver thread. Leopard Saint Fa's eyes immediately turned scarlet. He had been repeatedly insulted by a Little Earth profound practitioner. Wouldn't he be a joke among the dark forces? This damned little girl. He was actually able to recover so quickly in such a short period of time and come up with a strategy to deal with him based on the previous attack. Only 15 years old. Such a person was too terrifying. If he stayed, he would definitely be a formidable opponent. Little girl, you're courting death. Leopard Saint Technique's anger rose once again. His palms immediately set off a terrifying palm wind, striking towards Yi Qing Luo. A strong pressure pressed towards Yi Qing Luo's face. Yi Qing Luo knitted her brows and reacted swiftly, displaying her footwork to evade immediately. The remnant power of the powerful and enraged palm energy still brushed past her back. Yi Qing Luo cried out in pain as she endured the intense pain coming from her back. She opened her glower flame fan and set off a wind blade. Then, he used the silver threads to create a protective shield in front of him. The Leopard Saint Technique snorted and soared into the sky. His figure instantly disappeared into the air. Yi Qing Luo's eyes gradually sunk as she felt the dangerous airflow in the air. Behind her, a void split open. A sharp claw was about to clasp Yi Qing Luo's shoulder. Chapter 9:31. Her injured back scraped against the gravel on the ground. Instantly, Yi Qing Luo frowned in pain. Her brows kept trembling. Her forehead was already oozing cold sweat. Her petite body was trembling slightly. Yi Qing Luo gritted her teeth, panting heavily as she forced herself to stand up. She could clearly feel the feeling of liquid flowing out from her back. Her entire back felt extremely itchy. The prickling and itchy feeling was unbearable. TSK, I'm starting to like you more and more. Leopard Saint Technique said so, but the profound energy he used was merciless. His so-called liking. It should be more and more he wanted to play her to death bit by bit. Yi Qing Luo's footwork became faster and faster, but she could only avoid the fatal attack on the vital parts. If she used the blink movement secret technique now, she probably wouldn't be so restrained. But these people were from the dark forces. Their background was not clear. Once she used the blink movement secret technique, it was very likely to expose the Azure Dew bracelet in the Purgatory Tower. If the dark forces knew about this, they would probably pursue her even more fiercely than now. Leopard Saint Technique's Achilles heel, what exactly was it? She had to think of a way to solve the leopard saint technique as soon as possible. She absolutely could not die, and absolutely could not allow leopard saint technique to be arrogant. Otherwise, not only would she lose her own life, her brothers, her companions would all lose their lives here. Based on her own physical condition, she couldn't hold on for too long. Xian, he would definitely rush back. She believed that Xian wouldn't leave angrily regardless of her life or death. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. She looked down at the protective shield surrounding her. Taking a deep breath, she directly rushed towards leopard saint technique. After a few strikes, the protective shield formed by the silver threads had already been smashed into pieces by leopard saint technique's attack. This was the moment. Yiqing Luo didn't retreat because of the broken protective shield, but she directly went against leopard saint technique. Those broken silver threads were like vines, rapidly entangling leopard saint technique. The protective shield was formed by the silver threads. It was smashed into pieces, which was equivalent to the broken silver threads. Leopard saint technique didn't pay attention to those silver threads. Instantly, more than 10 silver threads pierced into his heart. This was not the end. Yiqing Luo saw that her plan was successful, and her lips curled into a cold smile. You didn't expect it, right? The glower flame fan and I are one body. My profound great upgrade and the silver threads attached to the glower flame fan are also controlled by my thoughts. As soon as he finished speaking, the dozen or so silver threads that had pierced Leopard's sacred technique's heart began to spread rapidly throughout his body. It continuously penetrated his internal organs. Fresh blood soaked the black clothes of the leopard saint technique. A bloody smell lingered between the two of them. Damn it, leopard saint technique only felt a stabbing pain in his body. Those sharp silver threads were constantly cutting his internal organs. In the depths of his eyes, wisps of mysterious qi darted about in his fury. Bitch, you will pay a painful price for your actions. The scarlet eyes of the leopard saint technique burned with raging fury, intertwining with the mysterious qi. He raised his hand, grabbed a handful of silver threads on his chest, and pulled it out. Fresh blood splattered all over the ground. Leopard saint technique didn't care. If it wasn't for the cloud pulling power between his brows, Yiqing Luo would have thought that this person couldn't feel pain. A cold glint flashed past the corner of leopard saint technique's eyes. He grabbed that handful of silver threads, curling it into a circle, and wrapped it around his wrist. Yiqing Luo's expression was shocked, and just as she was about to cut off this handful of silver threads. But the speed was not comparable to leopard saint technique. Just with the silver threads, leopard saint technique swung his long arm and pulled Yiqing Luo towards him. Chapter 9:32. Little girl, don't worry. I won't take your life for now. A cold voice sounded beside her ear. A chill ran down Yiqing Luo's spine. She saw his hand tightly clasping the tendons of her wrist. The leopard saint technique would not take her life, but he wanted to completely destroy everything she had. They wanted to cripple her cultivation, dig out her profound heart jade, and turn her into a cripple so that she would be at the mercy of the dark forces? No, she would never let the leopard saint technique destroy her. Even if it was destroyed, he had to drag the leopard saint technique along with him. Yiqing Luo's pupils shot out a piercingly cold and determined glint. As if sensing her thoughts, the azure water ring heated up slightly. His heart suddenly surged with a powerful energy. Just as Leopard Saint's skill was about to sever Yiqing Luo's wrist tendons, Yiqing Luo took a deep breath, shut her eyes tightly, and suddenly opened them. The light that shot out from his eyes instantly turned into a sharp blade and pierced straight into the Leopard Holy Technique's neck. The internal organs of the Leopard Saint Technique did not seem to suffer any internal injuries from being pierced and shattered. What about the neck? Unless the Leopard Saint Technique was not a monster. Otherwise, if his neck was pierced by Xian energy, even if he did not die, he would definitely not be able to continue fighting. Leopard Saint Technique apparently didn't expect that at this moment, Yiqing Luo still had the energy to retaliate. He quickly moved his neck to avoid the attack of the sharp blade. Just as he dodged the first blade, a second blade came slashing at him. The leopard saint technique was one step too slow. The sharp blade didn't pierce his neck, but directly pierced through his shoulder. The fresh blood splattered onto Yi Qing Luo's face. He actually dodged it. Yi Qing Luo's tightly knitted brows creased into a few wrinkles. 2 consecutive sharp blades missed the leopard saint technique's neck. Even if she still had the strength to create 2 more sharp blades, the leopard saint technique was also vigilant. Sure enough, leopard saint technique angrily locked onto Yi Qing Luo's neck. His sinister eyes were filled with intense anger. He clenched his fingers tightly, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. I'm going to kill you. This was the first time he was injured to this extent by someone other than his lord. The other party was only a 15-year-old human girl. Anger, shame, unwillingness, all sorts of emotions spread from the bottom of his heart. Black chi surged in his eyes, and his murderous aura grew stronger. Yi Qing Luo only felt that the breath of death was getting closer and closer to her. She was completely powerless to break free from the 5 fingers of the leopard saint technique. It was as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out, and he was powerless to retaliate. She couldn't accept this. He didn't want to give up. She didn't want to die here. She didn't want to see the leopard's sacred technique still alive to torture her companions. Moreover, she had yet to see Dmo Xian. At this moment, a deafening cry suddenly came from the horizon. A powerful and terrifying force descended from the sky. The leopard saint technique was directly knocked aside. Yi Qing Luo fell from midair. For some time, Yi Qing Luo didn't feel any pain from falling onto the ground. Instead, she fell into a wide and incomparably warm embrace. The faint scent of sandalwood lingered in her nose, making her feel at ease. Ah Xian, it was him. He came back just in time. Yi Qing Luo's curly long eyelashes fluttered as she tried her best to straighten her eyes, which had lost focus after her throat was grabbed. The minute she opened her eyes, she didn't meet with that pair of deep black peach blossom eyes, but a pair, azure blue, huge, like a pair of huge gemstone eyes, like the vast starry sky. Chapter 9:33. It was a little pungent, but Yi Qing Luo had no time to care about that smell. She stared in shock at this huge dragon head. Following that, her heart pounded violently. Dragon. A blue-colored, huge dragon. The arm around her waist tightened slightly, as though he was unhappy with her neglect towards him. Yi Qing Luo turned her head around in a daze as her gaze congealed on the man's peerless face. That rosy lips were slightly pursed as his brows revealed some displeasure. You don't want me to interfere in your battle. I respect you. I spent so much effort to find this human dragon to assist you, but you just stare at a dragon in a daze. A low and hoarse voice rang in her ears. The warm male breath sprayed onto Yi Qing Luo's earlobe. It caused the young lady's tender neck to pop out with beads of sweat. He squinted his peach blossom eyes in satisfaction as his voice became softer. Why? I'm not as good looking as a dragon. This tone. Why did it sound like he was jealous? Yi Qing Luo moved unnaturally in his arms as a blush surfaced on her cheeks. I'm just astonished. He, isn't he? Wasn't Long Yunzhan being controlled by the profound Inchi? Why would he transform into a dragon to help her? Your blood awakened his rationality. Dmo Xian gave a light harumph as his tone was filled with displeasure. After he regained consciousness, he still retained the memories of being controlled and was unable to face what he had done, so he went into hiding. Yi Qing Luo was stunned. Recalling the sword that Long Yunzhan stabbed Yin Xiao Yi. Recalling Long Yunzhan's continuous attacks on her, taking her life. All these, Long Yunzhan still remembered. He couldn't face them? I found him at the back mountain of King Ling's tomb and told him about the current situation. Dmo Xian shot a glance at that huge dragon head. That pair of bronze bell-like sapphire blue eyes flashed past a tinge of apology and guilt. Yi Qing Luo heaved a sigh of relief. As long as Long Yunzhan was willing to stand out, That meant that he had already broken free from the profound Yin-Chi's control and was fine. As for those matters, Yi-Ching Luo raised her hand and placed it on that dragon head. Her slender fingertips touched his mouth. Ajan, none of us will blame you for those things. If you really feel guilty and uneasy, then protect us when we leave the tomb of the Ling King and return to the academy. That pair of azure eyes shone brightly. Immediately after, the huge blue dragon circled in the air, and waves of dragon roars tore through the sky. He lowered his head, and his beard straightened as it landed right in front of Yi-Ching Luo. This was inviting Yi-Ching Luo to sit on him. The corners of Yi-Ching Luo's lips curled up slightly. Her blood-stained, alluring face looked so flirtatious. DMO Xian released her slender waist and did not stop her. Yi-Ching Luo's eyes were filled with gentleness as she regained her senses and gazed at the man behind her as she stretched out her arm to encircle his neck. He tiptoed and planted a light kiss on those rosy lips. She said softly, "Ah Xian, I'm sorry for making you worry. Definitely, there won't be a next time. Let me be willful one more time. Wait for me." With that, she flipped over and leaped on Long Yunjan's back. The giant dragon spiraled up to the sky once more, streaking across the sky like a bolt of lightning. Numerous people below fell into a state of shock. Even those 10 black-robed men from the dark forces stared at the sky in shock. Dragon. The blue giant dragon's scales shone like flowing lights. That dragon roar shook everyone's heart. It was actually a dragon. The supreme dragon? The dragon that could only be seen in books? It actually appeared right in front of them. Chapter 9:34. This wasn't the end yet. What was even more shocking was yet to come. Just as everyone was in a daze from the shock, staring at the blue, huge dragon, suddenly, an earth-shattering tiger tore through the air. Under the huge dragon, a huge white tiger was suspended in midair. It was said to be huge because it was at least 5 times the size of an ordinary tiger, and it was so sturdy that it made one tremble in fear. That white tiger stood majestically below the blue, huge dragon, but it wasn't suppressed by the huge dragon's prestige at all. Its fur was snow white, looking furry. On careful look, one could tell that the fur was as hard as steel. The king word on its forehead was sparkling with radiance. Its fangs were sharp, and its claws were hard. White tiger, one of the ancient 4 sacred beasts, hailed as the ancestor of sacred beasts, white tiger. This was even higher than the Overlord's 9-tailed fox sacred beast by several grades. What kind of day was today? A legendary dragon had arrived. There was even a legendary holy beast, the white tiger. Heavens! Were they dreaming? Cultivators from various powerhouses had their eyes opened wide, filled with shock and astonishment. They pinched themselves, slapped themselves. But eventually this huge dragon, this sacred beast white tiger, was still majestically floating in midair. Wait! Patriarch Yuchi's expression was grave, but he couldn't conceal the greed and envy in his eyes. He raised his head up high, staring at the 2 legendary god-grade sacred beasts as he asked in a trembling voice, This dragon can be confirmed to be the World Group's Vice Group Leader's dragon. Then, where's the sacred beast white tiger? Everyone regained their senses from the shock. They immediately reacted, right? They were now standing on Yi-Ching Luo's side, battling against the 10 over people from the dark forces. This supreme dragon was Yi-Ching Luo's dragon. Then she would be able to deal with these unkillable perverts from the dark forces. But where's that sacred beast white tiger? Was it the dark forces white tiger? Their sides were pet. Very quickly, they got their answer. When the girl on the back of the blue dragon saw the white tiger, her eyes were filled with joy. She opened her arms towards the white tiger and said in a joyful voice, Chi-Chi. When the white tiger heard the call, it turned its huge body, raised its head, and rubbed against the girl's bosom. However, it was simply too big. The girl could only hold on to a small patch of fur on the white tiger's head. The tiger's roar gradually became deeper, as if it was filled with joy. Yes, This holy white tiger was Chi-Chi, who had been in a deep slumber for an entire month. It was 3 times bigger than when he first saw Mu Chi-Chi. Clearly, it had leveled up in its sleep. Or perhaps it was because the current Yi Qing Luo had found her profound jade heart and obtained the power of the divine relic. As a battle pet with a blood contract, the battle pet would share its power with its master. The pet's strength would change according to its master's strength. Master, Chi-Chi misses you so much. That childlike voice entered Yi Qing Luo's ears. This made Yi Qing Luo suddenly stunned. She immediately regained her senses as she stared at Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi, it's you? Yes, master. Chi-Chi can now use the human language to converse with you. Chi-Chi smiled excitedly. That tender and crisp voice was especially lovable. After Yi Qing Luo's shock, she was instantly overjoyed. Not only had her Chi-Chi's strength increased, she could even speak in human language. Chapter 9:35. Hearing Chi-Chi's words, Yi Qing Luo suddenly regained her senses. Her gaze immediately fell onto the battlefield below, on Leopard Saint Technique, who was still lying on the ground being treated by the profound Yin Qi as her gaze turned cold. Now wasn't the time to question Chi-Chi. She had at least get rid of these 10 people from the dark forces. When the blue huge dragon and the sacred beast white tiger's vision were fixed on Leopard Saint Technique. Leopard Saint Technique, who was still fighting for time to treat himself, turned steely green. This trip to Nirvana Realm had shocked him greatly. Nirvana Realm not only had the beast human race, there were actually dragons and ancient sacred beasts. No wonder His Highness tried so hard to occupy Nirvana Realm. Ajahn Chi-Chi, let's work together and capture these few people from the dark forces alive. Yi Qing Luo had no intention to kill Leopard Saint Technique. Just crippling him was enough. Regarding the dark forces, the things that Guardian Snake knew were definitely not as much as Leopard Saint Technique. Even if Leopard Saint Technique wasn't willing to speak, she had the ability to pry open his mouth. The blue huge dragon let out a long dragon roar. It was mixed with a deafening tiger roar. 2 huge shadows leaped down from the sky. The people of the various forces were completely shocked. One was a supreme dragon, and the other was a holy beast, the white tiger. They were both Yi Qing Luo's war pets? How is this possible? How could Yi Qing Luo possibly own such a high-level war pet? No wonder Yi Qing Luo dared to be so arrogant and egotistical, as though she had no fear towards anything. From today onwards, the legend regarding Yi Qing Luo would shake the entire West continent, and even Nirvana Realm. The world group's reputation had completely spread. Leopard Saint Technique and the other 9 cultivators from the Dark Forces had no way to retaliate under the huge dragon and white tiger's attack. The battle situation had completely reversed at this moment. It was merely half the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Leopard Saint Technique's 2 legs had already been broken by Chi-Chi's thick tiger claws. What Leopard Saint Technique wanted to do to her, Yi Qing Luo had returned it all to him, picking out his tendons and digging out his profound jade heart, casually throwing it to a mercenary group. As for the other 9 people from the Dark Forces, 6 of them died, and the remaining 3 suffered the same treatment. These people were brought away by the world group's mercenaries. From the beginning until the end, none of the profound practitioners from the various powers dared to say a word. Yi Qing Luo didn't have the mood to bother about those people. She still needed the major forces to spread the news that the Dark Forces had already infiltrated the Nirvana Realm. At the very least, he wanted to create some ripples in the Dark Forces. After settling everything, Yi Qing Luo was worried about Yin Xiaoyi's injury and knew that Long Yunzhan felt guilty towards Yin Xiaoyi. There were also many brothers and sisters who were severely injured and in urgent need of treatment. He didn't stay any longer. He only said to the Yuchi family head, "The Yuchi family head will definitely be under the attention of the Dark Forces. If you don't want to die, pay attention to any suspicious people." After saying that, he led the dragon, tiger, and a group of brothers out of the Ling King's tomb. No one dared to stop them. Indeed, No one was more qualified than her to possess a divine artifact. After returning to the old house, Holy Thief, who had returned with Xiao Jin and the others, had already found more than 10 highly respected doctors to wait at home. Handing the brothers over to those doctors, Yiqing Luo rejected the doctor's consultation and directly walked towards her own room. She was covered in blood and injuries, and she didn't want her brothers to see it, not willing to make them worry. Moreover, with old man Sung around, the injuries on her would recover very quickly. Just entering the room, Yiqing Luo saw a hot bathtub in the middle of the room. The fresh lavender fragrance floated over, making her tensed-up body and mind uncontrollably relax. She slowly walked towards the bathtub, as her slender jade fingers unbuttoned the black-colored clothes which had been solidified by the blood. Just as the indecent clothes were half removed, the tightly shut door was pushed open with a bam. The gentle breeze brought along a familiar sandalwood scent. Yiqing Luo was stunned, and before she could even say a word, she already felt a scorching hot man's body approaching her. DMO Xian condescendingly gazed at the young lady in front of him. His dark eyes slowly filled with blood, as it was dark and gloomy to the extent that it was terrifying. His scorching gaze slowly swept past her exquisite petite body. His gaze touched the softness in front of her chest, and a feeling which made one's mouth dry instantly attacked him from all directions. Chapter 9:36. D.M.O. Xian. Yiqing Luo's face blushed as she bit her lips in anger. Why did he come? She speedily wrapped her underwear up and restrained her body from trembling, trying her best to ignore the heat from his gaze. But unexpectedly, she just wrapped her underwear tightly, was grasped by the man's slender fingers. Before Yiqing Luo could react, her clothes were forcefully pulled down by DMO Xian. What are you doing? Yiqing Luo's ears were so red that water was dripping out. This man, surely he didn't intentionally barge in at this moment? Her petite body trembled as both her hands pushed DMO Xian's shoulders, trying to break free from the man's restraint. DMO Xian's eyes sunk as his 5 fingers exerted a strong force, locking her arms. Suddenly, with a horizontal move, he hugged Yiqing Luo's waist in his arms. Yiqing Luo's arms subconsciously hugged DMO Xian's neck. Yiqing Luo felt her heart beating very fast. Her throat was very dry, and so were her lips. She pursed her lips and felt even more dry from the man's scorching breath. She instinctively licked her lips as her eyelids drooped down. Her long, curly lashes fluttered unnaturally. DMO Xian's brows creased tightly as his gloomy eyes gazed deeply at her. He was extremely displeased with her unconscious seductive actions. Didn't she know how tempting she was right now? Feeling the man's gaze, it became more and more scorching. Yiqing Luo felt more and more unnatural as she moved her body slightly. Don't move. A low, hoarse voice rang beside her ear. He lowered his head slightly as his burning hot man's body got closer to her exposed skin. When he bent down, she could clearly hear his shallow breathing. His head was even closer to her. Yiqing Luo's petite body stiffened as astonishment flashed past her eyes. Surely he wouldn't really want to take this opportunity to do something to her, right? A man's desire came just like that. At this moment, Yiqing Luo couldn't care less about her shyness as she raised her head and grabbed DMO Xian's lapel as she said anxiously, Xian, we are not suitable. Before she could finish her words, her fingers were pushed away by the man's nimble fingers. In the next second, his body felt light, and he was submerged into the bathtub. The warm water with the fragrance of lavender made her body and mind relax. She had just closed her eyes when she suddenly thought of something. She lowered her eyes and glanced at her moonxiong. Sure enough, she saw that the white doo-doo in front of her chest had been untied by the man and thrown somewhere. She didn't notice it at all. The mist spread out, but it was still unable to hide the redness on Yiqing Luo's cheeks. Wash up. A deep voice sounded from behind her. He was still standing by the tub. Yiqing Luo shrank back into the water. Fortunately, the water was soaked with flower petals. Otherwise, wouldn't this man see everything? Wait a minute. Get out. She was bathing. Why did he have to stand at the side and watch? Even if they had already confirmed their relationship. But it wasn't to the extent where they could be honest with each other, right? Moreover, what the hell did he mean by clean up? After washing it clean so that he could eat it? This thought made Yi Qing Luo's cheeks turn even redder. Poo. What was she thinking about? Yi Qing Luo patted her own face as the warm water wetted her cheeks. Only this pat, Yi Qing Luo suddenly realized. Her originally smooth and fair hands were now covered with big and small wounds. Chapter 9:37. Yi Qing Luo's pupils dilated at this moment. These injuries were left behind during the battle with the leopard saint technique in the Ling King's tomb. After Mu Zifei's treatment and pain relief, she didn't feel any pain at all. She had also neglected these small injuries on her body. Not only her arms, her back, her legs, her entire body. It was filled with bright red wounds that were dripping with blood. Even for herself, when she saw this scene, she couldn't help but shiver. Not to mention DMO Xian, who was standing by the side, looking at her body and mind. The wash clean he mentioned, was he asking her to wash the mess on her body? She had thought that DMO Xian was because Yi Qing Luo curled up her body in the water as the shyness on her face disappeared. Her pink lips trembled as her voice turned slightly hoarse. Xian, go out first. This kind of body, even she herself felt nervous looking at it. Facing such a body full of scars, how could DMO Xian possibly have any reaction? A woman would dress for the one who loved her. No matter who it was, no one was willing to let their beloved see such an unbearable side of themselves. DMO Xian's gaze was deep as he stared at the inexplicably gloomy young lady in the water, as his brows creased tightly. Earlier, she still had a bashful look, as though she flew into a rage out of embarrassment, like an enraged little wild cat. Why did she suddenly feel so dejected? Get out! Get out! Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly. After she finished shouting this sentence, her mouth was buried in the water, as though she wanted to submerge herself into the water, unwilling to let him see. Glancing at the splashing warm water, there were still traces of bloodstains. DMO Xian understood. That pair of peach blossom eyes were filled with a smile. He bent down, and his wide purple robe was rolled up to his wrists, as both hands reached into the water. Yi Qing Luo stiffened as she shrunk to one side. The splashing warm water made his robe wet. His large palm, however, forcefully held on both her arms. Using a little strength, he lifted her chin, which was half submerged in the water. Wash, or I'll wash for you. His low and hoarse voice was filled with frivolity and ridicule. Yi Qing Luo's eyes widened as her cheeks couldn't help but blush. When she raised her eyes to look at him, his expression was still as indifferent as before. It could even be said that he was a little cold. The light in Gu Pan's bright eyes dimmed slightly. He would rather mind her now that she was covered with wounds. Otherwise, why would his expression be so cold? Perhaps it was because of her injuries, or perhaps it was because the man standing beside her was the person she cared about the most. The girl in the white mist looked extremely fragile. Once upon a time, even if she had been shot, she would have been able to survive a life and death situation by herself. Even if she was deboned and tortured inhumanely, she would still be strong enough not to make a sound. However, in front of this man, her emotions could never be truly indifferent. I do mind. A clear and elegant voice floated down from above. When every single word entered Yi Qing Luo's ears, her eyelashes trembled as her gaze grew dimmer. The man behind her seemed to squat down. A scorching aura enveloped her back. The man's black hair fell into the water and stuck to the girl's skin. It was itchy and somewhat unbearable. Following that, a mellow voice, like fine wine, entered her eardrums extremely clearly. I mind that you've made yourself into this state, yet you refuse to ask me for help. Yi Qing Luo's petite body trembled slightly and finally softened into DMO Xian's arms, which were soaked in warm water. Looking at my beloved woman, covered with scars, Have you ever thought about how much pain my heart is in? DMO Xian's accusation made Yi Qing Luo's heart tremble fiercely. Chapter 938. Because I promised you that I would let you grow up on your own until you felt that you could stand by my side. I endured all my anger, all my impulses. I watched helplessly as you were injured again and again, yet you stood up again and again. Lil Luo, how cruel you are. The last four words were like a sharp needle, piercing into Yi Qing Luo's heart. That's right. How cruel she was. Looking at the person he loved with his own eyes, covered in wounds and drenched in blood, but because of the promise that they had made, because of her stubbornness and willfulness, she could only stand on the spot, filled with worry and heartache. I'm sorry. Yi Qing Luo lowered her head, as her pink lips slowly opened and closed, spitting out three words. DMO Xian's slender fingers clasped her lower jaw, blocking her apology. The war man's breath sprayed scorchingly. I'm very angry, so angry that I don't want to talk to you. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as she turned her head around, anxiously wanting to apologize. Her mouth was blocked by the man fiercely, a hot and wet kiss deeply imprinted on her lips, as though he was venting the anger in his heart, or as though he was taking revenge on her. A scorching kiss, fiercely burning her lips, her body, her heart. DMO Xian's strength was extremely strong, so much that Yi Qing Luo was unable to withstand it. Her hazy eyes were like silk as it faintly met with the man's ink-black pupils. That pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes was filled with deep feelings. However, that expression was filled with a trace of cold and sullen expression, but he couldn't bear to vent his anger on her, so he could only use this method to punish her. Guilt pervaded her heart. Butterfly wings' eyelashes drooped slightly as Yi Qing Luo automatically stretched out her arms, wrapping them around DMO Xian's neck, giving herself completely to him. Pouring all her feelings into this kiss ignited all the feelings between the two of them. The hazy fog outlined their figures indistinctly, like a dream or a painting. This kiss lasted for a very, very long time. So long that Yi Qing Luo had forgotten to breathe, as her petite body had completely collapsed into DMO Xian's arms, heavily panting. DMO Xian was willing to bite her lips, and this kiss had aroused his desire. The large palm which was holding onto Yi Qing Luo's slender waist slowly moved upwards, directly covering the young lady's soft chest. Yi Qing Luo bit her lips tightly and buried her head in DMO Xian's chest. She was completely naked now, nestled in DMO Xian's arms. She even took the initiative to kiss him. Oh my God! Yi Qing Luo's cheeks were flushed red, so embarrassed that her entire body, which was covered with scars, started to turn pink. Especially the tips of his ears, which were so red that they looked like they could drip water. The hand in front of the moon Xiong had already started to move according to its own instincts. Yi Qing Luo immediately pushed DMO Xian's hand away. Ah, Xian, enough. His broad and hot palm brushed past the skin on her chest. This caused Yi Qing Luo's body to tremble even more violently. And because of this push, DMO Xian's rationality returned to his mind. His dark and gloomy eyes swept over the blushing girl in his arms. Suddenly, DMO Xian's long arm tightened around her, hugging her tightly in his arms. Yi Qing Luo wanted to struggle, but she heard the man's scorching and heavy breathing, each more hurried than the other, as though he was enduring something. She instantly understood, as her body softened and obediently leaned into his arms. They hugged for a long time, until the warm water in the bathtub had already turned cold. DMO Xian's arms suddenly exerted strength, carrying her petite body out of the water, turning around, and placing her on the bed. Yi Qing Luo's heart was beating nonstop, as her face was so red that she didn't dare to look at him. Chapter 939. Wipe yourself clean and lie down properly. DMO Xian's voice was still slightly hoarse. Yi Qing Luo immediately wrapped herself tightly in the silk cloth, wrapping her body tightly, without leaving a single gap, even though she grew up in such an open world in the 21st century. But Yiqing Luo had always been clean, never for the sake of the mission or the development of the Hidden Yi family, to give herself to anyone. Even the once useless and cowardly Yiqing Luo, when she was in love with Lung Fenghua, she had never given herself up in order to capture his heart, whether it was her previous life or this life. DMO Xian was the only man she had intimate contact with. Still not wiping? DMO Xian frowned, squinted his peach blossom eyes, and slowly leaned over. Waiting for me to help you? Yiqing Luo's lips pursed tighter, blushed, and shrank into the bed. I don't need your help. Can you go out first? DMO Xian didn't answer. Instead, he directly used his actions to express his answer. He walked straight to the side of the bed, bent down, and with a stretch of his long arms, wrapped himself in the silk cloth and herself into his embrace. Just when Yiqing Luo thought that he was going to do something, the man wrapped himself with the silk cloth and gently wiped the water droplets on her body. His gentle action made Yiqing Luo slightly stunned. Her watery eyes gazed at DMO Xian's peerless face in a daze. Even when she was under DMO Xian's control, lying on the bed, she still hadn't regained her senses. It may hurt a little, bear with it. DMO Xian's voice became more and more hoarse. That magnetic voice was like a feather, tickling every part of her heart. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes blankly, apparently intoxicated in the handsome man trap, unable to extricate herself. Then he felt a cool sensation on his back. Following that, her delicate body trembled. The feeling of pain, in an instant, hit her whole body. Oh, this pain made her completely regain her senses. Yiqing Luo wanted to move, but her limbs were in so much pain that she had no strength. Just a slight movement, there was a burst of tearing pain on her skin. Sealing off the pain for a long time is not suitable for healing. It will also cause great damage to the body. DMO Xian sat by the bed, his slender fingers holding a white jade medicine bottle. Yiqing Luo was drenched in cold sweat from the pain and caught a glimpse of the medicine bottle. This was the medicine bottle that DMO Xian was holding in his hand when he barged into the room. He was here to apply medicine for her. His heart was moved. DMO Xian's light snort drifted into his ears. It's better if you die from pain. If it's not painful, you don't know how to learn. D-Zune, can we still have fun? The feeling of being touched disappeared in an instant. When DMO Xian applied the medicine, he was extremely serious and cautious. His black hair cascaded down like a cloud of smoke. Every now and then, he would brush his black hair aside to prevent his hair from falling onto Yiqing Luo's body, sweeping away the medicinal dew on her body. The sparkling and translucent medicinal fluid flowed over every inch of Yiqing Luo's skin. After the ice-cold feeling came the sharp pain of the wound tearing. This was an antiseptic and anti-inflammatory medicinal liquid. Furthermore, it could also wash away the pain-killing powder that Mu Zifei had applied on her wounds when he was treating her previously. Yiqing Luo endured the pain as she laid prone on the bed, her slender fingers clutching the sheets tightly. Her little face was slightly red, her eyes were tightly shut, her expression was slightly painful. Her pearly white teeth tightly bit her lower lip, as if she was restraining herself from moaning in pain. But in reality, only she knew. Her current situation was simply. Chapter 940. The injuries on her body were indeed painful, but Yiqing Luo was already used to it. Especially, the man sitting by the bed made her have no extra thoughts to pay attention to that little bit of pain on her body. The stunning face buried under the white pillow was extremely red. The man's slender fingers brushed the ointment over her body. The iciness of the ointment was the same temperature as the man's fingers, making her body tremble from time to time, itching to scratch. Once she thought of herself lying naked in front of DMO Xian, allowing his fingertips to caress every inch of her skin. She felt extremely ashamed, restraining the trembling of her petite body, restraining her voice that was about to overflow. The injury on the back has been applied. DMO Xian's eyes flickered slightly as his throat moved. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled as she clutched the blanket tightly, covering the scenery in front of her. I'll do it myself. I'll do it myself. She sat up straight and coincidentally met eyes with DMO Xian's bent body. From that pair of obsidian-like eyes, Yiqing Luo saw a trace of ridicule. So Lil Luo wants me to apply medicine all over your body. The man's low and hoarse voice was suppressed to an extremely low level. In this atmosphere, it was especially tempting. Yiqing Luo's cheeks flushed red as she shyly lowered her head and growled in a low voice. Who? Who wants you to apply medicine on me? The man gave a low laugh. The body that was half sitting by the side of the bed was trembling slightly from laughing. The entire bed also gave off a trembling sound. Such an atmosphere, it was a romantic feeling, coupled with the sound of the bed's trembling. It seemed more and more ambiguous. The surrounding air temperature gradually rose. Yiqing Luo lowered her head, not daring to look at DMO Xian's expression as she bit her pink lips and said softly, Put the medicine down and leave first. I come when you ask me to. I leave when you ask me to. Wouldn't that be a loss of face? DMO Xian intentionally shifted towards the bed, his gaze deep as he gazed deeply at Yiqing Luo. The scorching heat in his eyes seemed to want to swallow Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo had just shifted towards the inside of the bed when she was scooped up by the man's long arm and she fell into the man's arms. She exclaimed and clutched the sheets tightly. She looked up and said, Ah, Xian, I said I'm very angry. DMO Xian deliberately leaned close to her ear, his inky black eyes gazing at the young lady's little face in his arms without blinking. Seeing her blushing because of him, her charming eyes filled with shyness, the bottom of his heart seemed to be filled with a warm, soft, and sweet feeling. The girl in his arms stiffened. The struggling stopped. She obediently snuggled into his arms. After a long while, he heard her soft voice, So sorry. What are you sorry for? DMO Xian hooked up her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. When their eyes met, a trace of shyness and panic flashed across those beautiful eyes. Yiqing Luo wanted to shift her gaze away, but was forced by the man's bad taste, so she could only look him in the eye. The man faintly hooked his lips beside her ear. Her eyelashes fluttered, her charming eyes gazed at him. After a long while, she slowly said, I shouldn't let myself take on the risk, fall into danger. I shouldn't let you watch me get hurt, and even stop you from helping me. I shouldn't. She was obedient. Unrestrained and unrestrained, she listed out several mistakes. So obedient that no one could bear to reprimand her. DMO Xian's inky eyes reflected her face. Chapter 9:41. His arms were wrapped tightly around her waist, as though he wanted to integrate her into his body, to become one. I'm sorry. Yiqing Luo had no words to refute and could only apologize. Yes, he was her man. If she didn't rely on her own man, was she going to let others rely on her? This thought made Yiqing Luo's face sunk. Even if it was just a casual thought, she would absolutely not allow DMO Xian to belong to someone else. Her arms suddenly wrapped around DMO Xian's neck as her elegant brows flowed with warmth. She straightened her body and kissed him on the lips. The young lady took the initiative to kiss him, making DMO Xian slightly stunned. A smile flashed past his eyes as he immediately hugged her waist tightly, turning from guest to host. This kissed until Yiqing Luo was out of breath before DMO Xian released her. The young lady's soft body laid in the man's arms. Pink lips in the red moon, hazy and charming eyes, and that light, heart-stirring panting and instinctive moaning. All were subconsciously provoking the man to become a beast. DMO Xian's hand, which was hugging her waist, increased the strength. Yiqing Luo had difficulty in breathing, and her abdomen was pushed slightly by the strangling. Lil Luo DMO Xian's hoarse voice was filled with a strong desire. Yiqing Luo didn't hear it. She, who was in a daze from the kiss, raised her eyes and blinked at him. Her lower jaw was locked heavily by DMO Xian. The man's ink-black eyes seemed as though he could see through her soul as he gazed deeply into her eyes. In his eyes, there was a spark of excitement. "You're seducing me." This was a statement, not a question. Yiqing Luo's heart skipped a few beats. I didn't. DMO Xian stared at her swollen red lips, stained by sparkling luster, as if seeking his kiss. "Didn't." DMO Xian's fingers swept past her lips. "You're only wrapped in a blanket, and you took the initiative to kiss me. Isn't this seducing me?" Yiqing Luo's face instantly flushed red. Her little face immediately turned away, not daring to look at him. In the earlier situation, her mind was filled with DMO Xian's anger and guilt, thinking of how to apologize to DMO Xian to dispel his anger. Deep in love, he naturally kissed her. How could he have known that he was currently naked? Looking at the young girl who was so shy that she couldn't even say a word, that shyness really aroused a man's desire. Furthermore, it was the woman he loved. If it was during normal times, DMO Xian would definitely not be willing to restrain himself. After all, he and Yiqing Luo were in love with each other, and he had only set his eyes on Yiqing Luo alone. In future, whoever would get married, have children, and grow old together. This kind of thing would happen sooner or later. But now, Yiqing Luo had just experienced a life and death battle and was covered with injuries. He wasn't so beastly as to not care about his beloved woman's body to settle his Beast Valley debt. He tightened the blanket on Yiqing Luo and straightened his back towards him. "Apply the medicine." After saying that, he left without looking back. If one looked closely, one could see that the warm water had soaked his body and his muscles were tightly clenched. That footstep seemed extremely flustered. The man got up, and Yiqing Luo felt a gust of cold wind. She wrapped the blanket tightly and saw DMO Xian getting off the bed. Just as she was about to call out to him, she saw him leaving her room directly. Her heart trembled fiercely. Staring at the door, she was in a daze. Was he angry because she was too proactive? Chapter 942. "Lassie, you're really too slow." Suddenly, Old Man Song's voice sounded in her mind. He looked like he couldn't bear it anymore. "Usually you look so smart. Why are you so slow when it comes to the matters between men and women?" Yiqing Luo was stunned and only recovered after a long while. Her cheeks flushed red as she gritted her teeth and said angrily, "Just now you saw it all." She and DMO Xian almost had sex. She took the initiative to give a kiss, all given by Old Man Song. "I still know how to write the words, 'Don't look at indecent things.'" Old Man Song snorted and explained, "I don't have that kind of perverted hobby." Old Man Song rolled his eyes in the azure dew bracelet. He didn't have the leisure to stare at Yiqing Luo 24 hours a day. If it wasn't for the sudden feeling of the lass's inexplicable disappointment, he wouldn't have opened his eyes to figure out what had happened. Yiqing Luo's mood gradually calmed down and lowered her eyes, unable to hide her disappointment. Oh, Old Man Song couldn't bear to see her like this. In his memory, Yiqing Luo had always been confident and flamboyant. Unlike now, dejected as if she had lost everything in the world. She really had deep feelings for that kid, DMO Xian. "Lass, don't let your imagination run wild. That kid loves you so much, that's why he left now." When Old Man Song opened his eyes, he happened to see DMO Xian leaving and Yiqing Luo staring at his departing back in a daze. Old Man Song had lived for thousands of years. Seeing this scene, coupled with the fact that Yiqing Luo was only wrapped in a sheet, he could roughly guess the reason for her low mood. "Loves me so much," Yiqing Luo murmured. If he loved her so much, why did he leave without looking back? Old Man Song clicked his tongue and said earnestly, "Any man who sees his beloved woman in a disheveled state will not be able to keep calm, especially after being so intimate with you. If he stayed any longer, it's inevitable that something uncontrollable will happen." Old Man Song was an elder, but when he mentioned this topic, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but blush. "You're badly injured now. He left in such a hurry because he cared about you and didn't want to lose control and do something to hurt you. As for why he left, I'm sure you understand." Throwing down these words, old man Song faintly sighed. Yi Ching Luo's cheeks turned even redder. He was in such a hurry to leave because he cared about her, because he did not want to hurt her body by doing that kind of thing when she was injured. He left. It was not that he was disgusted with her, but he cared about her. The corners of her mouth unconsciously curled up into a smile. Her eyes were filled with happiness and sweetness. The old man in the azure dew bracelet clicked his tongue. Love, it was so powerful. Even Yi Ching Luo, who had never lowered her head and was so strong as though she was made of iron, would also sink into love and become a little woman. It's good to be young. Old man Song turned off his sight and hearing once more. He continued to dive into the azure dew bracelet and study the Purgatory Pagoda. In another courtyard of the Under Heaven Mansion, it was quiet, completely different from the liveliness of the outer court. An ordinary-looking young man dressed in a black robe carried a bowl of steaming hot medicinal soup as he slowly walked into a room. The room's furnishings were monotonous and the colors were dark. It looked extremely oppressive and cold, without a hint of human presence. The young man's line of sight fell onto the bed. This bed was also monotonous and cold. There were no gauze curtains or patterns. Chapter 943. He could not imagine that this was a girl's room. Lying on the bed was a delicate and pretty young girl. Her face was pale and her eyes were tightly shut. Her brows were slightly furrowed as if she was in pain in her sleep. Her pale lips were trembling slightly. The young man frowned and walked over quickly. After putting the medicine aside, he walked to the bed and was about to bend over. The girl on the bed suddenly struggled in pain. She stretched out her hands and grabbed at something. The young man's brows furrowed even more and his eyes darkened. Staring at the slender and fair little hand, he finally shook his own hand. The girl seemed to feel at ease when she felt the warmth. She clenched his broad palm tightly. Her soft skin caressed his palm. It carried the unique fragrance of a girl and entered his nose. The young man was stunned for a while. He bent over and sat by the bed. He was about to wake the girl up. Perhaps the girl sensed that someone was approaching. She held the young man's hand and slowly moved closer to him. In the end, she found a comfortable position in his arms and fell asleep peacefully. Her tightly knitted eyebrows also relaxed. The young man's body stiffened, and he only came back to his senses after a long while. He looked at the girl in his arms in a daze. His expression was a little embarrassed and helpless. He wanted to push her away, but his hand paused in midair when he saw her sleeping peacefully. After being stunned for a long time, the young man retracted his hand and slowly placed it on her waist. He lowered his eyes and looked at the girl's delicate and pretty face. Even he did not realize that the expression on his face had become increasingly gentle. When she was sleeping, it was completely different from when she was sharp-tongued and hot-tempered. It was extremely quiet. So quiet that it made one's heart ache. Her body, how could it be so soft? It was like a ball of cotton nestling softly in his arms. The smile in his eyes became increasingly gentle. However, beautiful moments could never last for too long. At this moment, hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. Then, a gentle and concerned voice of a girl could be heard. "Xiao Jin, how is Miss Yin?" The door was opened, and a woman in a peach-colored short skirt and simple attire ran in. The worry on his face froze when he saw the scene in the room. On the bed, the young man and young woman embracing each other were precisely Xiao Jin and Yin Xiao. Xiao Jin's hand, which was holding Yin Xiao Yi's delicate body, instantly froze. He stared awkwardly at the person in his arms, then looked at the woman opposite him. "Taozi, don't wake her up." Peach was also embarrassed. She covered her eyes, bowed, and stepped back. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Please continue. Please continue. Don't misunderstand. I'm not. Peach was in such a hurry to leave that she didn't pay attention to the threshold of the door. She fell backward and sat on the ground. She covered her mouth in pain and endured the sharp pain coming from her buttocks. "Peach!" Xiao Jin subconsciously wanted to get up to get the peach, but just as he moved, he remembered that he was still carrying Yin Xiao Yi in his arms. He could only squat down and pull Yin Xiao Yi's hand away. He was about to carefully place her back onto the bed. The girl's clear eyes slowly opened. There was no sleepiness in his eyes. It clearly reflected Xiao Jin's face. Chapter 944. Yin Xiaoyi's face was pale, and her expression couldn't be seen. However, when a pair of clear and beautiful eyes quietly stared at Xiao Jin felt an indescribable sense of guilt. After a while, Yin Xiaoyi furrowed her brows and glanced at Peach, who was still sitting on the ground and enduring the pain without making a sound. Her dry lips moved slowly. "Don't worry about me. Go help Miss Tao." Xiao Jin saw that she didn't question why he was carrying her and instantly heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly stood up and rushed to Peach, reaching out to help her up. Peach looked at the expressionless Yin Xiaoyi and then at Xiao Jin, who was standing stiffly beside her to ease the awkwardness. She felt helpless. These two slow-witted and sunder people. If she didn't give him a push, when would she be able to understand his thoughts? "Xiao Jin, don't worry about me. I'm fine. Go take care of Miss Yin." Peach smiled and brushed Xiao Jin's hand away. Xiao Jin had always been thick-skinned, but now it was so thin that it would break with a poke. He glanced at Yin Xiaoyi from the corner of his eye and saw that her clear and beautiful eyes were still staring straight at him. This was the rhythm of a punitive expedition against him. Immediately, he laughed dryly. "Since she's awake, there's no need to take care of her. Your fall is worse. Can you still walk? I'll help you to the front hall and let Lulu take a look." With that, he reached out to hold Peach's arm and led her to the door. Peach was about to kneel down in front of Xiao Jin. Just how slow was this man? Even though she was very clear that Xiao Jin had chosen to help her away because he had been caught red-handed by Yin Xiaoyi and had taken advantage of Yin Xiaoyi. That was because she was shy. But if he helped her leave, in other people's eyes, they would think that he cared more about her. Like Yin Xiaoyi, Peach was about to hold her forehead and sigh. "Yes, Miss Tao's injury is worse." A cold voice came from the bed. Yin Xiaoyi scoffed softly as her pale lips curled into a smile that was not a smile. "Anyway, I don't have any special relationship with him. Miss Tao, don't misunderstand, lest Xiao Jin finds it hard to explain to you." That seemingly elegant but extremely cold smile caused Peach to shiver uncontrollably. It was over. Yin Xiaoyi had indeed misunderstood. She coughed lightly and hurriedly explained, "He doesn't need to explain anything to me, and I didn't misunderstand that. You guys talk. I'll go to the front hall to find Lulu." With that, Peach quickly turned around and wanted to escape from Yin Xiaoyi's room. The moment he moved, he felt a tearing pain coming from his buttocks. She took a deep breath and did not have the courage to take another step. Just as she was in a terrible fix, Peach felt her body lighten and was carried horizontally in Xiao Jin's arms. Her delicate body stiffened, and she instinctively wrapped her arms around Xiao Jin's neck. When she wrapped her arms around Xiao Jin's neck, Peach's expression changed slightly. She thought to herself, "It's over." She looked over Xiao Jin's shoulder at Yin Xiaoyi on the bed. The young girl's pale face was indifferent, without any ripples. However, there seemed to be some light in her beautiful eyes that was gradually dimming. Peach's heart trembled. She opened her mouth, wanting to explain something for Xiao Jin. But Xiao Jin had already carried her out of the room and walked towards the front hall. The words she wanted to say stopped at the tip of her tongue. She retracted her gaze and raised her eyes slightly, staring at the young man who was carrying her. A strong masculine aura enveloped her body. Peach blushed and lowered her eyes shyly, not daring to look at him again. This man was really silly, but he was silly and adorable. It was no wonder that even though Xiao Jin's looks were not outstanding. Chapter 945. Yin Xiaoyi leaned against the side of the bed, her eyes staring at the open door in a daze. Xiao Jin and Tao Tao's figures had long disappeared before her eyes, but she still couldn't retract her gaze. Was he so afraid that Tao Tao would misunderstand their relationship? Was he so reluctant to let Tao Tao get hurt? Was he so distressed for Tao Tao? Yin Xiaoyi sneered, her face becoming increasingly pale. She was lying on the bed. The poison in her body had not been detoxified. Perhaps, if she couldn't find the antidote, she would die. But In Xiao Jin's eyes, it was just Tao Tao who had hurt her buttocks, who was more seriously injured than her. It was enough to prove Tao Tao's position in Xiao Jin's heart. She was thinking too highly of herself. Yin Xiao closed her lifeless, beautiful eyes. Suddenly, her head sank, and a feeling of dizziness came over her. Her consciousness gradually blurred, and finally fell on the bed, unconscious. Front hall. Groups of mercenaries were queuing up to treat the doctor. When Xiao Jin carried the peach and walked out, the bustling and clamorous front hall instantly fell into a deathly silence. The silence lasted for half an incense stick of time. Xiao Jin was dumbfounded, being stared at by dozens of eyes. He couldn't react for a moment. Tao blushed and awkwardly patted his shoulder. Xiao Jin, put me down first. Xiao Jin suddenly regained his senses and hurriedly put Tao down. I've offended you. I'm sorry. I just saw that you seemed to be in a lot of pain, so I didn't think too much. He actually carried a woman? And without saying anything, he decisively and forcefully held her in his arms. No, it's okay. Tao's blushing little face couldn't reduce the heat on her face. She unnaturally shifted her gaze, holding her buttocks, and limped towards Baiming Lulu. Lulu, before she could finish, Baiming Lulu cried out in surprise. You guys actually developed this relationship? Tao's face instantly turned even redder. No, you. Jean, let me tell you. Young people need to control themselves. A young lady's body is very delicate. You bullied her so badly that she can't even stand properly, you say? Baiming Lulu clicked her tongue, expressing a look of disgust towards Xiao Jin. The dozens of people in the front hall burst into laughter when they heard this. Lulu. Peach raised her voice and grabbed Baiming Lulu's arm. What nonsense are you talking about? How could a 16-year-old girl say something like that? Between her and Xiao Jin, they were just ordinary friends. Baiming Lulu glanced at Taozi's buttocks and patted her shoulder earnestly. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be shy. I'm a doctor. In front of a doctor, any privacy is not privacy. If you talk nonsense again, I will ignore you. If there are any rare herbs in the future, I won't ask 3,000 peach blossoms to ask around for you. Peach flew into a rage out of shame. Baiming Lulu had always been a blabbermouth when it came to matters related to treatment. She wasn't joking when she said that. Instead, he seriously considered it from the perspective of a doctor. But there were still so many people around, and they were pushing her and Xiao Jin into a pair. Not to mention that her reputation was tarnished. If this were to spread to Yin Xiao, even 10 mouths wouldn't be able to clear her name. At this moment, they heard a sweet voice leisurely. What do you mean by paying attention to moderation? Who bullied the other until they couldn't stand? Chapter 946. Everyone's vision turned towards the person who spoke. They saw Yiqing Luo, who was dressed in a long red dress, walking over with light steps. Perhaps it was because they had rarely seen her wearing such a gorgeous and flirtatious color. The mercenaries' gazes were filled with astonishment. The fiery red dress fluttered in the wind, swaying like a blooming rose. When she took a step, it seemed like a billowing fire wave swayed. It was extremely flirtatious and breathtaking. What's the matter? Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as her vision shot towards Baiming Lulu. What interesting topic were you talking about earlier? Why did you become quiet the moment I arrived? Baiming Lulu blinked her eyes as she enviously gazed at Yiqing Luo's red dress, as though she was infatuated, replying in a daze. I was advising Jin Zi to control himself, not to be too rough with young ladies. Lulu. Peach grabbed Baiming Lulu's arm tightly as her cheeks flushed red. I accidentally tripped. It's not what you think. Baiming Lulu looked suspiciously at Peach's buttocks. Tripped. Seeing Baiming Lulu's suspicious look, Xiao Jin couldn't take it anymore. Don't talk rubbish. Peach and I are just ordinary friends. Don't ruin her reputation. Seeing Xiao Jin getting angry, Baiming Lulu's expression suddenly turned serious as she hooked Peach's arm, placing it on her shoulder. All right, I'll leave now. Her words had just ended when Baiming Lulu and Peach's silhouettes were nowhere to be seen. The entire hall of mercenaries burst out laughing. Yiqing Luo looked at Xiao Jin as her brows creased slightly. How's Xiao Yi? Biming Lulu's thoughts had always been on medical skills and alchemy. Towards matters of the heart, she was even slower than Xiao Jin. Generally speaking, she would absolutely not misunderstand that Xiao Jin and Peach had an ambiguous relationship. Unless, what had they done to cause others to misunderstand? If Xiao Jin and Peach really had some relationship, then what about Xiao Yi? Mentioning Yin Xiao Yi, Xiao Jin's mind suddenly recalled the scene earlier when he pulled Yin Xiao Yi into his arms. The young lady's fresh body fragrance was still lingering in his nose. His fingers seemed to still retain the softness of the young lady's body. His face instantly flushed slightly as he lowered his head and didn't reply. What kind of expression was that? Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes as she sized up Xiao Jin's expression deeply. However, he was unable to guess what he was trying to express. I'll go take a look at Xiao Yi. Yiqing Luo was too lazy to continue guessing. The current situation was not the time to think about love. Xiao Jin and Yin Xiao Yi's relationship could only depend on themselves. If Xiao Jin really chose the peach in the end, he could only smile and wish him well. She walked a few steps towards Yin Xiao Yi's courtyard, then thought of something and stopped in her tracks. I told you to find Master Ghost Doctor to save Xiao Yi. Have you found him? Xiao Jin's expression instantly returned to normal. Her cheeks, which were slightly flushed, had already returned to normal. His expression also became serious. By the way, I have something to discuss with you. As he spoke, he took out a brocade pouch from his bosom. It was the brocade bag which Yiqing Luo had given to Xiao Jin, asking him to look for Ghost Doctor. In other words, Xiao Jin had not seen the Ghost Doctor. Seeing Xiao Jin's solemn expression, Yiqing Luo recalled her battle with the leopard saint technique in King Ling's tomb as she muttered to herself for a moment. I happen to have something to discuss with everyone. 1 hour later, we'll meet at the meeting hall. The mercenaries in the front hall could hear the seriousness in their words. The playful smiles on their faces instantly faded as all of them looked towards Yiqing Luo, responding in unison, yes. Chapter 9:47. Yiqing Luo went to Yin Xiao Yi's courtyard. As soon as he stepped into her room, he saw the pale-faced young lady leaning against the headboard with her eyes closed and her breathing shallow. Obviously, he had already fainted. Yiqing Luo walked over quickly and caught a glimpse of the bowl of cold medicinal soup on the table. Her eyebrows unconsciously furrowed. Xiao Yi, what happened to Xiao Yi? Xiao Jin, who was following closely behind, saw the unconscious Yin Xiao Yi, and his body instantly stiffened. Yiqing Luo used one arm to support Yin Xiao Yi as her fingers placed on her pulse. After searching for a while, she frowned and glanced at the young man, standing at the door in a daze. Then, she turned back. She took out a pill bottle from the profound phoenix ring and fed it to Yin Xiao Yi. Then, he helped Yin Xiao Yi lie down carefully and tucked her into the blanket. She did that. Xiao Jin only came back to his senses after a long while. Looking at Yin Xiao Yi's pale complexion, there was an indescribable dull pain in his heart. Yiqing Luo glanced at the medicinal soup by the side. Who prescribed this medicinal soup? Holy pirate. Xiao Jin walked over and picked up the bowl of medicine. Is there a problem with this medicine? I've already fed it to Xiao Yi twice. Could it be? There's no problem with this medicine. Yiqing Luo interrupted his wild imagination. Holy pirate? This old man had learned all his skills. His stealing skills could be said to be the best in the world. He even knows medicine. The herbs in this bowl of soup were all herbs that could suppress the purple poppy grass. To Yin Xiao Yi, there were only advantages and no disadvantages. Why haven't you taken this bowl of medicine yet? It was still placed at the side. It was already cold. Xiao Jin's expression changed slightly as he coughed lightly. Yiqing Luo thought of the matter regarding the peach earlier and didn't continue to probe further. The reason why Yin Xiao Yi fainted was because her emotions were unstable, which caused the poison in her body to spread. This emotional instability, it must have something to do with Xiao Jin and Peaches. She could more or less see Yin Xiao Yi's feelings for Xiao Jin. However, Yiqing Luo sighed as she stood up and left the bedside, turning her head to look at the uneasy Xiao Jin who was standing behind her. The poison in Xiao Yi's body has already started to spread, and we must find my master to formulate the antidote as soon as possible. The antidote to purple poppy grass, purple millet grass. The ghost doctor would definitely have it. However, Shangguan Lili had said before that the poison in Yin Xiao Yi's body was mixed with a poison powder specially made by the dark forces. Just the purple millet grass alone could not completely cure the poison. He did not know whether Shangguan Liuli's words were true or false. But, regardless of whether it was true or not, she had to believe it. She had no choice. Xiao Jin panicked. The academy will be completely locked down during the holidays. Even teachers and elders cannot stay in the academy. I snuck into the academy, but I didn't find any traces of the ghost doctor. Even if no one could stay in the academy. A ghost doctor who found it troublesome, a ghost doctor who had her own medicine refining room, shouldn't leave the academy. I also discovered something very strange in the academy. At the mention of the academy, Xiao Jin's expression became grave. He paused again. Let's talk about it together in the meeting hall. Yiqing Luo nodded. Let's go. Let's head to the meeting hall first and wait for everyone to gather. In the meeting hall, there were already more than 20 mercenaries who had received the notice. Hearing the hubbub in the meeting hall, they were all discussing about the dark forces matters, as though they were having a great time. Yiqing Luo was just about to take a step in when she bumped into a warm and broad embrace. She painfully raised her head and met with a pair of shimmering peach blossom eyes. He had changed into a purple robe, and his misty black hair was scattered over his shoulders. Chapter 948. He also wanted to take a bath. In her mind, she suddenly recalled what Old Man Song said. A man, in the naked embrace of the woman he loved, took the initiative to kiss him. He couldn't bear to hurt her, so he hurriedly left to do something. Indeed, what Old Man Song said was right. He didn't want to hurt her. Yiqing Luo instantly felt a feeling of being cherished. Her eyes were filled with smiles as she stretched out her hand and hugged DMO Xian's sturdy waist. Ah Xian, we are preparing for the meeting. DMO Xian squinted his eyes as he held her hand and sized her up carefully. After confirming that her wounds had been smeared with medicine, he put down her hand and hugged her waist tightly as he walked directly into the meeting hall. Didn't you just leave the meeting hall? And his actions were so hurried. Otherwise, he wouldn't have coincidentally bumped into her earlier. To pick you up. A simple and crude reply made Yiqing Luo's cheeks burn slightly, seeing those brothers in the meeting hall looking at her with ridicule. Yiqing Luo's cheeks were boiling hot as she complained to DMO Xian. My prestige as vice group leader has been swept away by you. Cough, cough. Tong Ziqing choked on her saliva when she heard that. Qing Luo, don't say it as if you have prestige. And I, Ruo, Pan nodded in agreement. Madam Qing Luo, I've never felt that you have prestige. This group of little fellows who were tearing me down, could they still play happily? The atmosphere in the meeting hall gradually relaxed. After a while, all the mercenaries who were still able to stand up had gathered in the meeting hall. Yiqing Luo took a look. There were about 5 mercenaries who were bedridden due to their heavy injuries and had not come over. She heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, all her brothers had survived this battle. Her gaze swept past those brothers who were standing upright, as her gaze fixed on Baiming Lian Cheng. Did you bring the Corpse King back? Baiming Lian Cheng nodded respectfully. I brought my brothers and found the Corpse King in the ruins of the tomb. Losing the tomb's Yin-Chi nourishment, the Corpse King no longer has any battle power. I have already handed the Corpse King and its coffin over to the Mercenary Association, receiving 600 mercenary group credit points and a sore manual. 600 points? As expected of the random mission of the random missions. As expected of a complicated training mission. The rewards were so generous that it was equivalent to what all of them would get if they took on and completed quests for an entire month. Random quests doubled the honor points. In other words, 300 points had turned into 600 points. Currently, the World Mercenary Group's honor points was 191 points. after deducting the 100 honor points for giving up on the first low-level training mission. In addition to these 600 points, he would have 691 honor points. Promotion to a silver mercenary group required 5,000 honor points. It seemed like there was still a long way to go. What's that sword manual? Yiqing Luo didn't take a good look at the mission's reward at that time. A complex experience mission. Only honor points and a sword manual? When Baiming Liansheng took out that sword manual, Yiqing Luo instantly understood. If this sword manual was leaked out, it would definitely cause countless swordsmen in the Nirvana realm to fight over it. This was the pinnacle of swordsmanship, the 15 styles of flowing clouds and gales. Yiqing Luo had also heard of this swordplay. It was rumored that the execution of this sword technique was as smooth as flowing water, like a gale. Chapter 949. Take a look at this sword manual. Which brother in the mercenary group is a swordsman? Take it to practice. Yiqing Luo placed the sword manual back into Baiming Liansheng's hands and immediately coughed lightly. Back to the main topic. She clapped her hands, indicating for everyone to shift their gazes from the sword manual to her. Ziqing, did those people from the dark forces who were locked up in the underground room say anything? The minute they returned to the old residence, Yiqing Luo got someone to lock up the 4 people from the dark forces who were still alive in the underground room. This underground room was dug out by God Thief in this 1 month's time. His original intention was to hide the things that he had stolen in the underground room. But now it had become the underground room to lock up the dark forces. Tong Ziqing shook her head. Their mouths are sealed tight, and they've already been tortured, but they refuse to say a single word. No matter, we still have a lot of time. Yiqing Luo didn't expect Leopard Saint Fa to obediently spill out everything about the dark forces. Smart people understood. This was their only bargaining chip to survive. They who were crippled couldn't escape even if they wanted to. They could only try their best to survive and wait for the Lord to save them. Yiqing Luo had long seen through Leopard Saint Fa and the others' thoughts. Save? The dark forces were all selfish people. Rather than saving, it was more practical to silence them, although they were going to report to the academy tomorrow. But with God Thief watching over the underground room, Yiqing Luo wasn't afraid that Leopard Saint Fa and the others would escape. If that lord really came, they would be able to catch a turtle in a jar. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed as she said calmly, "When I was retrieving the god relic in King Ling's tomb, I met 3 people from the dark forces. They should be considered as people with some status in the dark forces." From that guardian snake's mouth, the current thing we know is that the dark forces are preparing to invade Nirvana realm. Currently, 1/3 of the dark forces are hiding in the dark corners of Nirvana realm, preparing to take in even more cultivators to be used by the dark forces. The minute she said that, the meeting hall fell into a dead silence. 1/3 of the dark forces were already in Nirvana realm. However, in the entire Nirvana realm, other than them, no one else had noticed this. In other words, even if they had noticed it, they had made deals with the dark forces and concealed their existence. So, the reason why the profound practitioners from those powers were released from the Ling King's tomb, other than allowing them to help the Under Heaven mercenary group build momentum, the most important reason was to allow them to spread the news of the dark forces in the Nirvana realm. I'm sure that it won't be long before the profound practitioners of the various forces will be wary of the existence of the dark forces. The dark forces' plans will definitely be disrupted. The mercenaries looked solemn. The news of the dark organization spread out. This time, the Tomb King's Tomb mission was no longer just a simple mission. From the start of this mission, the World Mercenary Group was destined to become the focus of attention. The dark forces would definitely treat the World Mercenary Group as their first target. You all have to be careful in the academy. Yiqing Luo thought of Heavenly Academy's director and her eyes sunk. Try to avoid letting other students see your faces. In the academy, they have their own forces. Speaking of the academy, Qiao Jin immediately nodded. Yes, there are dark forces in the academy as well. When you went to the academy, what did you see? Yiqing Luo asked.